OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
And you're welcome along. It is Wednesday morning, I believe. Is that correct? It is. Yes, it's Wednesday morning of the Post-All-Ireland week. Owen, how are the celebrations going in your head?
Good. They were over on Sunday at about 9 o'clock. So
you'd rather be anywhere but here right now.
Get home in time for the Sunday game. On to the next one.
What's your FOMO like?
Yesterday with the FOMO was real.
Not gonna lie,
the Kerry Mafia were out in the Gleneagle Hotel with Sam Maguire. And
you weren't.
I was not. No, I was.
It's interesting. Colin Boog is also with us this morning. It's interesting. You've literally just blown the cover of the Kerry Mafia, who you denied the very existence of.
There is no mafia.
It's like straight away. It's all right now. We can tell everybody.
What did I say?
The Kerry Mafia were at the Gleneagle Hotel.
Sorry. I meant a few of my esteemed colleagues. There is no mafia.
Okay, go on.
A few people that I'm in a WhatsApp group with were posting photos of them in a pub in Clarny having lunch with Sam Maguire sitting on the table beside them. They
seem to have unfettered access of it in the post-match celebrations, which would suggest they're well got.
They got a couple of hours looking after it yesterday, to put it that way, before it moved on to Tralee. And then another member of that WhatsApp group was also in Tralee with the players and all that. So fun was kind of real, but at the same time, I think after Sunday, I think I kind of had enough of it. Even Monday, I was like, I actually just don't have the energy for this. Just driving all the way down there.
One of the reasons Owen doesn't have the energy for this anymore, Colin, is because he's old. We missed that you're no longer a member of the 27 club.
I survived, thankfully.
We've got a bit of Stevie Wonder, do we? It's happy birthday, essentially.
Thanks very much.
We actually have a photograph of Owen's birthday last week when he was in studio looking very...
Look how young I look compared to now.
Looking very unhappy.
I wish I could go back to that moment of hope.
Yeah, we pulled a bit of a Ayew Toure on this. We missed your birthday. We apologise for that.
I kind of forgot about it as well, to be honest. It was the middle of the week. There were bigger things happening that weekend, and I kind of came and went. But I guess I can kind of say now, Kurt Cobain achieved more in his entire life than I did, and I can crack jokes like that.
Jimi Hendrix,
Amy Winehouse. Yeah, so I survived. It's great.
We missed your birthday as well, Ger.
Just about.
It's like a week-long thing.
My birthday was months ago.
Yeah, but we did the same thing. It inspired us to do the same again. We actually knew it was Owen's birthday last Tuesday, but we said we'd leave it for a week.
I appreciate
maximum
that.
Impact.
And God, you got me.
And I had so many angles to work with your facial expressions last Tuesday. Mm-hmm. I knew there was something up, that we must have forgotten something.
You were a bit off. You were a bit off with all of us, in fairness, and we apologise for that.
But I think the main reason for that is that it was a Tuesday.
That your birthday was on a Tuesday.
the worst day of the week.
After a heavy weekend, you mean?
No, just the worst day of the week every week. If anybody disagrees with that,
it is. I actually had this debate with someone. And someone was like, "Oh, Monday's the worst day."
No.
But Monday's not, because you have no expectations of a Monday.
Correct.
Monday, you just get through the Monday, right? And also, Monday's never that bad. But Tuesday is no man's land.
Tuesday's the second Monday.
You are stranded on a Tuesday.
It's like February. It's just always the worst. The second bit of it is always the worst.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced of my pronunciation of February too. So
yeah, this is a really good conversation.
OTB
notes to talk about this.
OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Nothing effortless about the first 3.5 minutes of the show this morning. You do look much older this week than last week, though, and I suspect that's because of the amount of time that you've been spent drinking over the week. People were texting us in. Our regular Spurs fan was a resident Spurs fan rather was texting us in going, could I judge whether or not you were hungover? I mean, I don't think anybody needed to. It was like
I wasn't though. Really, I was just absolutely shattered. I was frazzled.
That's what hangovers are like when you get to your late 20s now, Owen.
Yeah,
you can no longer take it.
Yeah,
it's just the sleep.
That's it. I honestly wasn't. I was sleep deprived and frazzled, and my sentences weren't making much sense because my brain wasn't functioning very well yesterday. So I apologise to resident Spurs fan.
Why is this your favourite All Ireland?
Did I say it was?
Oh, but you're behaving like it was.
You didn't really know me in 2014 though. The 2014 was kind of like a bolt from the blue, and really the reason why this one is a great one is because of relief. And just not that the pressure was off the shoulders or anything, but it was a grim couple of defeats, wasn't it? Those last 2 years, Cork, watching that at home, not being able to be there, and then obviously Tyrone was just horrific, absolutely horrific the way that afternoon developed. And even when you go back to 2019, the opportunities that they had to win that drawn game, that's what it is. That's why this one is special. And then obviously the manner of the semi-final win So those are the two main reasons: the defeats and also the drama of the semi-final. That's what makes it special.
Colin, do you think after a moment of like such a special relief that the outpouring would be joy and
Yeah, I'm surprised.
do you think?
What are you scrolling? Like Ger takes out his phone, he starts scrolling here. What is he scrolling to now?
Do you think that like?
Oh, what is this going to be now? What are you scrolling towards? Like I can see it like going up towards like
At 3:54 a.m. the morning after, do you think you'd be sending out like a montage, a bit of video from the montage of the opening from the day itself, where it's the Kings of the Naughties and the message, and the message seems like Team of the Decade has been decided. Do you think 4 o'clock in the morning after you've had the biggest moment of relief in your entire life would be to settle old scores? Like you have to pause the video, you have to get the camera up, you have to hit record and scroll in a bit, and then you have to type out with two hands. Seems like Team of the Decade has been decided. Send!
Right, I was in. That's basically exactly how it happened as well. I think I got to like I think Joanne had just started presenting, and then I was like, I was going to watch the entire coverage basically on Sunday night. I was like, I can't do this. I just got to go to bed. But the highlights came on in the boar's head, and I saw the montage without the audio, obviously. I was like, does that say Kings of the Naughties? So I like put that into the back of my brain, and I was like, when I get home tonight, I'm taking a video of that montage and I'm sending it to Ger, because I think it's ultimate proof that finally the debate has been settled. In the 2000s.
Tommy in the live comments wants to know, on a scale of 1 to Yera, what would you rate Owen's display of playing down Kerry's easy All-Ireland campaign?
Yeah.
I think this is not a handy All-Ireland. I think they won it easily in the end, but it wasn't a handy All-Ireland because they beat the Dubs along the way.
I also think everybody else has kind of like downplayed it nicely as well, you know, like I think the general consensus out there is that they didn't play very well. I think a lot of people seem to think that if Conor Callan was playing a semi-final that they wouldn't have even been in the final.
Good grist for the mill over the winter.
Yeah, I think that I don't think anybody's really kind of like blowing this up to anything more special than it really is. Like I think many people outside of Kerry have knocked this already, and that's just the nature of winning an All-Ireland.
I think they're all wrong though. I do think that like there's no guarantee that Conor Callan's form was going to be the form that he displayed in Leinster. It could have been the form that he displayed in last year's All-Ireland semi-final when he was grand but not great. Like you know,
he's probably worth a point. I'll absolutely accept that.
Well, yeah, but maybe Kerry play differently, and
yeah,
in the second half they start the second half better. Maybe the penalty goes in, it doesn't really matter, and they end up getting beaten by 6 points, and he scores 4.
He did score 1 point in the drawn game in 19. Like Kerry have shown in the past they can keep him to 1 point now. In the replay he was much better, but like that's one thing that's been thrown at them. Like to be honest with you, I kind of, if we were doing predictions, I do kind of fancy Dublin next year as well, so maybe I kind of believe it as well, but I don't think anybody needs to make a big effort to downplay this. I think plenty of people have knocked it, and I'm sure that if Jack is still in, I'd be surprised if Jack wasn't in charge next year. When he goes into the start of next year, he might be picking up a few of those little nuggets for outside.
Absolutely.
Was your immediate vicinity all Kerry fans? Where you were sitting?
Yes, season ticket, yeah. Well, actually behind me there was a good few Galway fans. I just jumped down a few rows just to find someone, because you're just sitting with people you don't truly know. Like the fella I was sitting beside, I failed to get his name, another Kerry fella. He was just saying it was just a really, really special win for him, because he was saying that he had a very tough year with some family issues and stuff like that, and like you start to build up these like connections over the course of the 70 minutes where mostly it's like, Jesus, what is X doing, or whatever it is, and that relationship builds over the course of the 70 minutes, and then afterwards it's just ecstasy, and then you try and hop overseas to try and find your friends wherever they may be. But yeah, generally it's Kerry fans, but behind me there was a lot of Galway fans. It's kind of mixed for the All-Ireland, it seems to be.
I was surrounded by all male Galway fans. Just happened to be.
And what were they like?
Quite tense, jubilant at half time.
Yeah.
But there was a feeling of more to come here. Job's not done. And actually, when the game was level, less than 10 to go, 5 to go.
67. I think.
67, wasn't it? When the free happened, yeah. They were quieter than I thought they'd be with the scoreline and the time left.
2/10.
That's it.
Yeah. Our section was quiet, like.
Yeah,
it is even when Shane Welch was living it up, like, yeah, like there was obviously like a couple of big scores where you couldn't but cheer them as a Galway person, but I just would put that down to tension. Like I was even surprised by when Clifford nails that free, the Kerry fans around me who had the energy to get up and cheer it. I just couldn't. I was like, this is where we're kind of stuck to the seat now for the time being. I think that's just tension, but yeah, I thought they were
Like, I mean, that's kind of one of the prevailing themes as well after the last two games. Is like, oh, the Dublin fans and the Galway fans are nice. It's mad how when you lose, you're just bitter about the opposing fan, and that's what I've realised over the last couple of weeks. That there's nothing wrong with Dublin fans at all. I was a problem.
Even when that free was given, there wasn't much consternation.
About the Galway free?
I think there was a bit around me now, to be fair.
I don't know. It was my section.
Also, as I've kind of watched that back, I think, did the ref actually get that call right? When I was coming away from the stadium on Sunday, I was like,
yeah, as Paddy Andrews said, yeah, referee nerd, yeah, but like in the cut and thrust of the game,
yeah,
like, you know, he hasn't given it once in the match before. Are we saying that did not occur once in the match before? Of course it does. It occurs like 15 times a game.
It does, but what usually happens is that it's like a weak arm that's kind of like left out there, and it kind of looks like a clothesline. And what happened here was actually the man gets held up by Killian Spillane.
Yeah, illegally, right? And then he pulls the arm into him. And anyway, you can defend it now.
Yeah, no, I kind of changed. Initially, I thought that Kerry were very, very lucky, and after seeing it again, I actually think the ref did get it right. But yeah, it is a. Yeah, well, actually, technically.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. But I do think that you can. It's a diminished level of complaint that you can have when you consider that the Gavin White shoulder seems like it was the only good shoulder of the year, where he actually correctly timed it. And
on McDade.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it could have just been retribution for that.
Kevin McStay went through the ringer in commentary. He's watching it back.
Went the other way. The shoulders first.
Yeah.
They score off the free, and then so you think it's retribution? Oh yeah. Okay,
yeah. For not giving.
Okay. Yeah.
McStay for the free did the Gary Neville noise now, which he's incorporated into his co-commentary, which is when the free was given, and then he watched it back and he's like, great call.
Exactly. You know, by the letter of the law. Except
But what's wrong with the letter of the law?
Because you should penalise in the first minute. You should.
It's a technical free, isn't it? Is what
you should
call
establish that we're going to call this all game.
So if you haven't, does continuous wrongs make an eventual right? If he sees it as it is.
If you set the tone for how you're going to referee the game, and then you change the tone of how you're going to referee the game in the last 5 minutes, that's wrong.
But the referee's job is to see an incident then and there, and make a call right there, not a consistency of a team.
Are we saying that so that's the only time that happened during the game? Because I don't believe that.
Do you think he bear in mind that it was a draw game at 67 minutes gone in the All-Ireland final, and he's going to make this contentious decision that's going to change the course?
I think it's
of recent history.
Yeah, I think it's too much. I don't think you should be making that call unless it's a make-up call for the Gavin White, which could well have been because the replays went around and around and around, and like Kerry lads are looking at the thing going, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
The replays thing is weird. It happens for some calls and not for others.
It needs to be all the time, and like even when it's very contentious, let's just show us. As Brawley used the word, infantilising the crowd, and it does infantilise the crowd when you don't show them. They've got much better this year. They've started to show them. They've started, and all hell has not yet broken out.
No.
So things are improving. What were you laughing at?
Shifty lad in the comments. OMG, Owen has the fear. I remember those days well. And then Dan Delaney, get Owen to give us some more D2 stories.
Yeah, like D2 was interesting. Like some of the players were saying they couldn't get in. My dad had purchased 9 tickets in the lead up to the All Ireland final. Like I hadn't, because I was obviously on the road, like working last week, and I wasn't really getting time to check the phone. This
is a story you've only told on Twitter Spaces. The 9 tickets and your anger at that.
Did I tell it on Twitter Spaces?
You did, yeah.
Okay.
So sorry, just if you haven't yet listened back to the post All Ireland final Twitter Spaces, about 15 to 20 minutes in, Owen appears out of nowhere, and Tommy has never been happier to have Owen, and Owen has never been happier in his life, and tells this story. Which he's now looking at me going, did I? Was I? What? Where was I?
Yeah, my dad did buy like 9 tickets because he was kind of like texting to the WhatsApp group, should we get tickets for this? And I was kind of like driving around all the time last week between Galway and Kerry, and I hadn't really got a chance to say, like D2, not exactly the greatest place in Dublin. I'm not sure, is it like worth getting tickets for it? And anyway, by the time I get home, he's like, oh yeah, I bought 9 tickets for that during the day. I was like, oh my God. Wow. Well, also as well, because halfway in your mind you're thinking if they lose, this would actually be the grimmest place to be. Like nobody would show up. So there was a bit of a gamble on that, but it was just unbelievably packed, and the players just had no room to breathe. And even the fact that Coppers is closing down early now as well, there was no release valve for people to go across the road. So I'd say they went from there back to their hotel, barring maybe another lock-in somewhere else in town, which I believe there was maybe one or two others, but I think the majority of them just had to go back to the hotel. So I think it was a bit claustrophobic for them. It was obviously a fantastic celebration, and they would have bitten your hand off for not have that space on Sunday morning as well. But I think that's probably been the experience that's continued over the last couple of days as well.
And they were €20.
They were €20. That was the...
Yeah, that was exercising you a lot on Sunday night.
Dad bought 9 tickets.
He's basically paid for a round in Bali or wherever they end up going in January.
And won't you be delighted when that happens?
Yes.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. Tommy Rooney in 5 minutes' time to revel in the managerial merry-go-round, which has resulted in something good finally for Meath. Emma Byrne is going to join us at 8:10 to talk about England and how I heard football's coming home on the telly this morning. I wonder what that was about. Sports pages at 8:35, sports news with John Duggan at 8:40. Jonathan Wilson's going to join us for a brand new slot. You had to be there at 8:50. Seamus Hickey is going to join us at 9:10 to talk to us about the Limerick jousts with Brian Cody over the years, and then Cathal Dennehy was in sparkling form talking about the World Athletics Championships and everything else that's going on there. We should talk about the main story overnight, which is it's kind of not really overnight, but over the last 24 hours, that Cristiano Ronaldo was in Manchester at the training ground yesterday. All the big wigs showed up to have a conversation with him, and various papers reporting that Manchester United are standing firm in their desire to make sure that Cristiano Ronaldo understands he's going to be part of the plans for Erik ten Hag. But the papers who are connected to Ronaldo are like, no change. He's leaving. He wants to leave. His opinion has not in any way been altered by Ferguson being there, by Richard Arnold, the chief executive, being there, by Ten Hag being in meetings with his agent George Mendes. I don't know. It doesn't. You got to assume that Man United know he's going to leave, but they're just trying to get some value out for him at this stage.
Yeah, like Ferguson, his role in all this is very interesting. Apparently, it doesn't happen last year unless Ferguson is involved in terms of getting him back to the club. So those people who say that Ronaldo returning to Manchester United was a mistake are people like, it's all Alex Ferguson's fault at this point. I mean, but maybe he does come. Maybe you didn't need Alex Ferguson involved for him to come to the club. But
Rio and Fergie, instrumental.
Yeah, the duo. Like, what is like? I mean,
how happy are City that he didn't go to them?
I was thinking about that earlier.
They wouldn't get Haaland.
The sliding doors moment of what last season would have looked like with Ronaldo.
They would have got Haaland. They would have got Haaland.
What they had done with Ronaldo?
I mean, just paid him because they're so rich. It doesn't matter. They made a massive profit in transfers.
Isn't it going to be an odd season with that? Ronaldo likely won't go anywhere unless he takes that Saudi Arabia alleged offer, which is astronomical money even by his standards. So if he doesn't take that, unlikely that Atletico Madrid and Chelsea are going to get him. Chelsea have seemed to lost interest over the last few weeks. Atletico like him, Diego Simeone likes him, but probably can't afford him. So say he doesn't go to either of those options, stays at United, we're going to see the first season of Ronaldo on the bench regularly.
Alvaro Morata still has to leave Atletico. There are still some pieces that can fall and move around here that will create space at a Champions League club for Ronaldo. And bear in mind, one of the papers pointed out, he started last season at Juventus. He actually played for Juventus last season, and then the move happened, and it happened really quickly at the very end. So I think what Manchester United are doing are saying, we're in charge. There's a new sheriff in town. We will decide if you leave or not, and we definitely don't want you here if you don't want to be here, like on the QT.
I don't think they want him there at all. I think we'll find out in a year's time when Ronaldo leaves the club in a free transfer that Ten Hag was humouring him for a year.
Why would he do that though? Because it's not great to have. We saw last season.
You have to play him.
But we saw last season, every time you subbed him off or any time anything happened, he didn't go to the away fans. He's disrespected the manager. It's like, why would you volunteer to have that for any reason other than financial? Like that, the only thing that can be happening now is Man United are deciding that we're going to try and run the club properly and make some good financial decisions. I understand that, but at the same time, this bit of like the Ronaldo circus, which it is, will follow this team around as long as he is there. And imagine being shot of him and Pogba at the same time. It's like a completely different environment and a completely different atmosphere.
Well, it depends how long Ten Hag stays. If he spends maybe 5 years at Manchester United, which is obviously no guarantee given the modern history of the club,
but say he does and Ronaldo leaves after a year, it'll be forgotten about in 3 years' time that Ronaldo played under Ten Hag, because I feel, right now speaking, unless something dramatically changes, which it could before the window closes, is that I think Ten Hag would just leave Ronaldo out of a lot of squads, because that would take away the problem of, say, Brentford last season, where you take off Ronaldo and he's sulking on the bench and it's so visible and it makes an impact on everybody else around him. So if you keep Ronaldo physically out of the way...
Isn't he likely to play in games against teams like Brentford, though?
He might play every so often.
Yeah.
And when he plays, I guess he'll play the full game or near the full game, or unless he scores 2 or 3 and they take him off. But I think he might leave him out for 4 or 5 games in a row, just so the spotlight physically isn't on him and then they can focus on the rest of the squad, because they've had a very good pre-season. Now, so did David Moyes, so did Louis van Gaal.
In that
pre-season
instance,
doesn't mean much.
In that instance,
but Ronaldo's not around.
In that instance, why would you bother spending all the wages that you're spending on him if you can just get rid of him for nothing?
I don't think it's Ten Hag's problem. Don't think the wages is his issue. He's inherited Ronaldo. Wouldn't have brought him in. They pay him already like this. It's like, fine, you can continue to pay him and we'll use him. I don't think he's going to be put under huge pressure by the Glazers to start him, or by John Murtagh or Richard Arnold to actually play the guy.
No, I don't either.
I think his reputation has never been higher now than Hag, because he's come in. He seems to be a bit of a disciplinarian. You have all these stories coming out over the summer. Andy Minton was on the show last night confirming how much of a disciplinarian he is, and not so much in a petty instance like Louis van Gaal, but definitely more so than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Ralph Rangnick. The players seem to be responding to it, and he's had a good pre-season, has a great CV with Ajax. So stock's never been higher. If he wants to leave Ronaldo out of the squad, I don't think there'll be too much dissent from United fans, particularly the timing of Ronaldo's wanted departure, which was, the middle of the summer. He could have said it in April. So United fans aren't necessarily too happy with Ronaldo, a lot of them. And then you have about 30% of the fans, according to Andy Minton last night, who want him to stay, who feel, well, he scored 24 goals last season in all competitions and was the club's top scorer in a season that was particularly terrible by Manchester United's modern standards. All
right. If you're a United fan like Colin, get in touch this morning. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can use the hashtag OTB AM. Of course, you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Tommy Rooney, good morning to you.
Morning, lads. How are we doing?
Very good.
Good to see Eoin back.
Coming in hot and heavy there for us. What's going on?
All is good. Is my mic a bit hot there? Is it? Sorry. All is well. All going well. It's interesting times, isn't it?
How excited are you, Tommy? Colin O'Rourke in charge of the Meath footballers. 20 years too late, but better late than never.
Not necessarily 20 years too late.
Well, he should have got the job after Boylan, right? They should have given it to him then. They should have given it to him one of the 3 times before that he applied.
Yeah, there's definitely a feeling that in and around 05, 06, 07, and Colin Coyle does get it, so one of the Meath legends do get a hold of it. But when you're looking at the Jubilee teams that are out at the weekend, from the Dublin 95 team, there's been such an influence from that team on Dublin football over the last 10, 11 years. I think 3 of the players in that team have now managed Desi, Jim and Gilroy. Whereas on the Meath side, I think it was just Colin Coyle. So even if you go back further from the Meath team of 88 to 92 or so, again, not many of them got a chance to manage post Boylan. This is massive. Look, when back in 04, 05, O'Rourke had managed Meath's first schools teams to Hogan Cup success. St. Pat's and Avon won 3 in 5 years. That was massive for Meath football, and there was a bit of a buzz around Meath football at the time. That stuff's important. You see the history that Galway have with Jarlaths and their underage success over the last 20 years. Galway haven't necessarily gone away over the last 20 years. Meath football has.
What happened last night and the last, 24, 48 hours, in terms of what we saw on social media, etc., etc.?
Okay, so news broke on Monday. There was slight murmurings over the weekend that something was coming. There's been a lot of murmurings around GA managers over the weekend. Some of it has been absolute rubbish.
Like what? What's rubbish? Do we just do that? What's rubbish? Because I've heard all the rumours.
Erroneous piffle.
There's been a lot of erroneous piffle. What are the erroneous bits?
Are we talking specifically about Meath here?
No.
The
I presume you're talking. Sorry. Let's just stick with Meath. Sorry, we can go back to the other stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry. So there was erroneous piffle around Meath as well.
Well, I don't know if I described it as erroneous piffle, but I'm not sure if you saw the tweets last night from Bernard Flynn.
No, tell everybody, because a lot of people won't.
Let's assume we haven't. We'll come back to that in a minute. So 1 o'clock on Monday, it emerges just after 1 o'clock. It was 1:30 that Colin O'Rourke has been appointed, or he's been put forward by the management committee in Meath. There was a 3-man committee put together to come up with the new manager. it emerged on Monday that they had selected Colin O'Rourke and his management team of Barry Callahan and Stephen Braid to be the next management team in Meath. Last night in Navan or in Dunganny, there was an executive county board meeting, and O'Rourke was given a 3-year term with a review after his second year. That's all confirmed. Late last night, another Meath legend who we know was going for the job, Bernard Flynn, sent a tweet, and I think we have it to have a look at there. Now, this is tweet number 1. I would like to sincerely thank...
Go on, yeah, sorry, you got
to
it.
wish Colin and the lads all the very best going forward. It was very disappointing to find out on social media yesterday who the next Meath manager would be, but a big, big thank you to Robbie Brennan and Stephen Rochford for their loyalty and support. I'll come back to that in a minute, because 40 minutes later that tweet is deleted and a new one is put up that you'll be able to see now. I sincerely wish Colin and the lads all the very best going forward. It was disappointing to find out on social media yesterday who the next manager would be, but a massive thank you to my entire backroom team for their loyalty, effort and genuine support. So if we just go back to the first one, I was surprised in a way to see this, because by all accounts the manner in which Meath ran their search for the next manager was incredibly impressive. Like, there wasn't a murmuring of who was getting this job, lads. I had no idea that Colin O'Rourke was getting it. Like, there was nothing coming out. I know that the management committee, there was 3 of them: Conor O'Donoghue, Sean Kelly, who had been involved in coaching the Meath for a long time, and Liam Kearns, who is, got a very important role up in Croke Park and is a very well-respected man in the county. They were all tasked by the county management team, by the county board management committee, to go and find the next Meath manager. Liam Hayes is talking about how important the job this is. This is massive. It's monumental for Meath football. They need to stop the rot that has set in over the last 12, 15 years. McEntee had 18 months where it got good. We got Division 1 football. We got a couple of Leinster finals where we just didn't get far enough. Meath football needs to get back there. So this is a huge appointment. I know that there was a number of interviews held. I have no idea who else went for that job. Everything was kept quiet and kept in-house. And I can put it on the record here that everyone who didn't get that job were informed in a phone call between 11:30 and 1 o'clock on Monday, before it emerged on social media, that they had been unsuccessful for the post. So I think that the use of language there is a little liberal, and it's unfortunate, because it's clear that Bernard Flynn was desperate to go for that job. He was the only other person that I knew was going for the job. It's a pity that it hasn't worked out for him, but I think Colin O'Rourke was the outstanding candidate here.
Robbie Brennan had been part of the Meath minor football team management group last year. Is that correct? So
no, that's not correct.
No.
Well, he was in and around it, but Robbie Brennan was part of the Kilmacud team that just fell short in the All-Ireland Club final, but he was also part of the Meath under-20s ticket. Bernard Flynn had put a dream team together.
Well, I'm just reading the piece from Donegal Boyle, and December 2021, Croke's manager Robbie Brennan will be part of the Meath minor football management team in 2022.
Sorry, he was part of the minor football team, but in a smaller capacity. He was assistant manager to Bernard Flynn with the 20s team.
Right.
That had that fallen out in Meath 18 months ago, 2 years ago. So, look, I don't know why exactly they didn't go for Bernard Flynn and whoever was on his management team. I found it interesting that tweet was deleted and put back up, because we know there's a couple of vacancies going in other counties where one of the names is rumoured to be heavily in the mix in one of them. So, I wonder was there a call
the name is
that?
Stephen Rochford, just for anybody that it was in the original tweet. So, and I'm sure you'd be a little bit upset if you're Rochford going, I mean, we didn't necessarily need to have that made public, did we?
He does tweet saying thanks to the lads for the support. So they could have just been,
yeah,
big Bernard Flynn fans. The second tweet says big thanks to my entire backroom team. So
it kind of fixes it just in case you're in any doubt.
But it's interesting. Look, I think it was. There's rumours going around the county of who Colin O'Rourke might have coming in his backroom team. There's no point really talking about them, because it's impossible
Are
to
they
know.
also Meath legends? Is he putting together the Magnificent
they actually
Seven?
aren't.
No,
they actually aren't also Meath legends. They're big
High-
names from outside the county, and I think that is.
Paddy Talley would only have to drive half the way from Tyrone to Meath that he has to drive from Tyrone to Kerry.
But Stephen Bray and Barry Callahan are locked in, are they?
Stephen Bray and Barry Callahan are part of his management team.
Okay.
So, you've got 3 corner forwards, 3 exceptionally talented, important people in Meath football over the last 30, 40 years. O'Rourke obviously goes back to the 80s. Barry Callahan was a quality player in the 90s and has also been involved in a lot of the good stuff that's been happening in Meath football behind the scenes. There is boring stuff happening in Meath football recently that are starting to come to fruition and coming together. This year on, for the first time, there's going to be regional championships in the county, similar to Kerry. It's not exactly the way it works in Kerry, but they're bringing it in where players from junior clubs and intermediate clubs are going to get an opportunity after the club championships to put themselves in the shop window. O'Rourke is speaking in the Meath Chronicle this morning. There's lovely photos of him outside of his house, and he's in some of the other papers as well, talking about the fact that it's going to be a blank slate and he's going to be looking around the county for players. Himself, working in Pats for the last 30 years, he'll know so many players. He's been coaching Simonstown. They've won 2 Keegan Cups back-to-back, the senior title in Meath in 16 and 17. He'll know all the players. Barry Callan has been involved with the under-20s in recent years and got on very well. And Stephen Bray is our last All-Star, and by all accounts, very highly regarded young coach. So that's impressive and that's important. But going off what Bernard Flynn's tweets there, whoever he had in his backroom team, it's clear that Flynn was putting together a strong team. He had one for the 20s before when that all fell apart. It's so important who you have. Let's not kid ourselves here. Colin O'Rourke is not going to be on the pitch coaching. Jack O'Connor wasn't doing it this year. I doubt Porrick Joyce was doing it this year.
I think Jack said he was doing a bit of the coaching.
A little bit, and that's fine. You can do little bits. You can jump in here and there. Like, we've all been involved in even club teams where you'd have a manager and a coach, and sometimes if they work really well together, you've got a winning formula there. You've got a manager who can step back and watch what's going on, keep an eye on everything, and then you've got a coach who's more hands-on, dealing with the football, the style of play. He's obviously working with the manager on that as well. So Meath are talking a big game here. I can't imagine that Colin O'Rourke has gone for this at whatever age he is. Possibly one of the oldest intercounty managers I think I've seen to get a job at the first time. He's stuck his neck on the line here. He's going to walk the walk after talking for a long time. There's no way he's doing that if Meath aren't being backed here. And Meath must smell blood. They must smell blood looking around the county and the province, that there's a chance to get back on the horse and put ourselves back where we should be.
Are you involved in the backroom team, Tommy, as a coach? Is that what you're telling us? You've got big names, and you're the one.
I'm on the other side of the country.
It's too early in your coaching journey, is it?
There's been a lot of tweets regarding Paddy Anders and James O'Donoghue and rumours that they're going to end up in various management tickets and Sunday game panels over the next 18 months. And look, I can confirm that that's not going to happen. No way.
I mean, two lads are like, what? Tommy, shut up. What?
You mentioned Joyce there. Joyce obviously got a lot of credit last week for his first interview where he talks about wanting to win in All-Ireland, and Colin O'Rourke's first interview is fairly bullish, not quite on that level, but he says, I would regard that we will have failed if we don't beat Dublin and we don't get to Division 1 of the league. That will be a fairly clear measurement of value. In most people's minds, beating Dublin will be the measurement of progress. So I guess that's an even more specific goal. Beating Dublin is the only measure of success for this Meath team. Is that realistic, Tommy, in 2 years?
100%. And I think, let me rephrase that slightly. Division 1 football is absolutely essential, and we have to get back to Division 1 and we have to stay in Division 1. This group of players and the players that come in now are going to need 16 games of Division 1 football in the space of 18 months. Beating Dublin has to be a goal. This is not the greatest team of all time that we saw win 6 in a row All-Ireland. We've seen it. There's chinks in the armour. There's been uncharacteristic issues in that camp over the last 2 years. They aren't the squeaky clean, incredible champions that we saw for a long time. There are problems there. Meath are a long way off it, an awful long way off it. But I think what we saw with Porrick Joyce and what I loved about it, and similar when Jack O'Connor, once it settled in that he had the job last year, you knew that he was right for this team in ways. Like, Jack O'Connor put the chest out, and he's a Kerry manager who's done it now so many times. He's been there since 2004 or since the 90s in however many capacities. He understands Kerry football. He knows how to be a Kerry manager. Porrick Joyce at the same time, he seemed to just facilitate a level of confidence in Galway once it clicked and once he got it right. Let's not forget that we got very excited about Joyce the first time he came in. Like, we were very excited about that Galway football. Things fell apart and he reacted, and he brought in a strong management team around him when he got O'Neill and a couple of others involved. So I felt like Joyce could stick the chest out and Galway people could stick the chest out, and they could believe and they had a bit of hope. And sometimes that's what a county needs. It needs a spark. It needs a bit more belief. They need to dip into what they are. Like you saw it with Kildare last year. There was a bit of a buzz around the county again. And hopefully this is the spark that Meath football can get. They aren't finished yet. Like, speaking to a couple of sources in the background of Meath football and reading Colin O'Rourke's words, it's been repeated time after time that we aren't finished putting together our backroom team. So in the next 4 weeks, I believe there's going to be very interesting news coming out. And again, going back to it, didn't happen for Bernard Flynn. He's a legend. We talk about the great All-Ireland Forum final performances on losing sides. I had a look back in the Meath Down game from 1991 the other night. Bernard Flynn kicked 6 points that day, so close to getting a goal. Meath came back from the dead. Colin Moore coming off the bench to inspire it. I know I'm going back to the heydays here, but this is what we need. We need a bit of spark from somewhere, and I think this is a chance for Meath football to get it right.
Yeah. Okay. You're very excited. We can feel it coming through. And it's
great to get the job done, Ger, this early.
Well,
you know what I mean,
if you look
massive.
If you look at some of the other counties that are sitting on their hand at the moment and waiting for decisions to be made, it'll be interesting to see how quickly those appointments do get made, because the club matches are starting and have started in many counties, and you want to be giving everybody an opportunity to perform well in this, and then get on your strength and conditioning program, and then when training happens properly in November, December, to actually be given a fair opportunity to make the team. And the only way you can do that is if you've got a management team in place now.
Yeah, 100%. And look, it's there's word that it's getting and moving a bit closer in Mayo, but there's been rumblings that how that's been handled has left a bit, left a little bit to be desired. I think there's 5 names that we do believe are in the mix for that job. Mike Finnerty was reported in the Mayo News a couple of weeks ago. I don't think that's changed. So I'm not sure where they're going to go.
The 5 names?
The 5 names are, well, Rochford is supposedly in the mix. Kevin McStay is supposedly in the mix. Mike Solon is supposedly in the mix. Ray Dempsey and Maurice Sheridan. So they're the 5 names that have been highly touted and heavily touted in Mayo over the last number of weeks. In Donegal, another massive appointment. The nominations for the clubs don't close until August 15th. That's still 3 weeks away. I just don't know why some of these counties aren't getting their jobs done. We saw the rumours in the papers. I don't know how true they are that, Jason Sherlock is on his way to Monaghan. We've heard very little about that since. We'll wait and see on that one. If it does happen, it'll be a very interesting one. And then obviously in Offaly, the job's not done. Tomas O'Shea has obviously been heavily linked. And then Wexford, Longford. I think is that the other one? Is there another job that's come up in the last day or two? But yeah, that's it at the moment.
It feels like a bit of an arms race, doesn't it? As if every county board has had a little bit of an injection of belief since Dublin have been beaten or something. As in, we've had 3 different All-Ireland champions over the last 3 years, and a few different All-Ireland finalists as well. That everybody's kind of thinking we could do that when they look at Galway and to a degree Tyrone the previous year. 2
quick points on this as well. Tommy, were you saying this is the first decade since something where we've had different All-Ireland winners for the first 3 years? Was that
the 90s?
That wasn't my tweet, but I have been saying that it's very similar to 2010s all year. We're entering that space.
Well, the one thing
2010, sorry, 3 decades in a row.
The one thing about the noughties was it was first-time managers who were getting the job done each time. It was Mickey Hart in his first season who won, just like Logan and Dooher, and then Jack O'Connor, first-time manager, as in his first year with this group. Getting it done as well, so it'll be interesting to see. And did Desi win his first year with the group? He did, so that's 3 years in a row where that's happened as well.
And
I don't.
I'm sorry, Owen, I haven't heard you the last 15 minutes, but I don't know if Owen's been talking a big talk about 2 in a row, has he?
Absolutely not.
Trying to yarrow it down.
I saw what was the tweet put out yesterday. I love how everybody's trying to say that I'm saying this sort of stuff. There was a tweet put out yesterday saying that I do believe that there's a chance that Kerry will go on and dominate over the next few years. And the clip was me saying why 2 in a rows are really hard and why I would actually say Dublin could win the All Ireland next year. So people want to think that Kerry people are talking 2 in a row. I'm not buying that. But as I said yesterday, that's different to multiple All Irelands. I think 2 in a row is hard.
Obviously it is hard. Only very, very good teams manage to pull it off, but very, very good teams might not have had the armoury that this team has. And I do think when listening to James, I don't know who was talking on the football pod, he was talking about they didn't really get that bounce when they won the All-Ireland in 2014. It was 14, wasn't it? Where the 3 lads came back into the group and they're like, oh, that's all we need to do. But actually this group are younger and they're not going to have 3 legends coming back into the team to boost them. They're going to have to take that responsibility themselves, and also they have 5 months of partying to do to get it out of their system. It's actually, I think, all very well set up for this group to go on. And now there's the chippiness of the Conor Callum would have beaten us, would he? Yeah. Let's see about that. Famously, Munster had a dig about no Rocky Elsom to Leinster And it pissed Leinster off so much that they smashed them again the next year, just to make sure that, like, well, we did it without Rocky Elson. So there'll be it'll come to be that those lines about, you would have lost that game and then it would have been Dublin's All-Ireland again. That's all. If me granny had balls, he'd be me granddad. One last thing, right? The down job came up, and on the face of it,
Yes,
the down
that's the other
job,
one, sorry.
the down job, not a great job, right? I would say the same way that the Derry job, not a great job. And then they find the right person who manages to get the great club side who has been dominant in the county on board, and all those players play for the county team, and suddenly they're competitive again. Just recently, one of the stars of the club team, that is the best club team in the county, came out and were like, well, maybe if one of our lads was in charge, things might be a bit different. So, shit or get off the pot, Kilcoo. Put your man forward. Put somebody forward. Anybody to take that job who has your, it's okay, we accept this guy's one of ours. And let's be having you. Come on.
It'll be a very interesting appointment, whoever gets it next.
Yeah, that's a sentence that just speaks to I know more than.
Yeah, come on, Tommy.
No, I don't.
Come on,
No,
we're all friends around
I'm
here.
telling you to shit or get off the pot too.
No, genuinely, I don't know. And I think what I've learned from the Meath situation is it's better if you don't hear anything. Genuinely. Like, I heard nothing about well, I did. Like, there was murmurings of Flynn was in the mix, okay? That was known in the county. I heard nothing else about who else was going for it. I had a strong feeling that there wasn't a chance we were going to go for an outside manager. I just think that that's in the county, that resonates in the county. They feel like they need a Meath man as a figurehead. That's what they have. I do believe that it's essential that the coaches that come in are from outside. I think that's so important, that they're the right people. It doesn't matter where they're from, but they're the right people for this management team and for this group of players. That's very important over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I think if we're hearing murmurings on WhatsApp or far-fetched rumours, I think that's a shocking sign and a very poor indictment of a selection committee and of a county, if that's getting out the way that some stuff has been emerging. So I'm not really buying half of that stuff.
What's the most outrageous rumour you've heard?
I'm not even going to repeat it because it was so outlandish. I can't remember what time of the morning it was put into our WhatsApp group. It was like 2 days ago. I'm not going to repeat it. Like, it wasn't the one that everyone was talking about at Croke Park at the weekend. It came out after the weekend about a manager stepping down.
Yeah, okay.
They're absolutely outrageous. Some of them that are coming through. It's silly season. It's like
it is silly season. I actually don't think you can blame counties who are taking their time and doing all their due diligence and saying the process is bad because they're doing it. If somebody feels like they're not going to get the job, the process is always bad. That's what happens. Everybody who doesn't get the job thinks the process was terrible, but if the right person ends up getting the job and it's an extra week along the way, that's not a disaster. And I actually think that, like, again, it's an amateur organisation where you can't expect complete confidentiality the whole way along the process, because too many people need to know what's happening and to be kept abreast of the situation. Like the Galway hurling getting Sheffield last year, that was a miracle that they were able to pull that off.
But it was so impressive with how they managed that, and it was so well handled. And I think, like, there's so many different, like, Colin Rourke had to leave or inform his Simonstown club that he was leaving and he'd be taking the Meath job. Like, he's been over that club for a couple of years. That happened on Monday morning or Monday afternoon. Like, a lot of people have to be told these things. Yeah. But just to be fair to Byrne and Flynn, like, just what I was going back to as well, when I said he was a little liberal with the use of the English language, he was told he wasn't getting the job, the same as however many other people went for it. I actually don't know who else went for it. There was one other name that came up. I know Cathal O'Brick was interviewed. It was on the We Are Meath podcast. O'Brick is somebody that Meath people would have in line to get this job in 2 or 3 years' time. He was involved with the underage teams recently and is touted as being in the mix down the line. But nobody, Ger, was told who was getting the job. Like, if you were going for a CEO job, you might get a call to be told that you're not getting it. But you're not going to be told who's getting the job. There's people that have to be told before that. So I think that's what happened to Meath this week. And I just wanted to clear that up because there has been messing going on and shenanigans in the background and poor things that have come out about the county board in the last couple of years in regards to the McAtee situation last year and a few other bits and pieces over the last decade. I don't think this was poorly handled. I think this was handled exceptionally well, and it gives me hope that Meath football is on a good path here and onto a winner.
All right. Moslefunk says Meath have been a badly managed county for over 20 years now. The amount of clubs in the county might need more than just O'Rourke coming in, needs a whole overhaul.
there's a lot of that happening in the background, and I think there's actually an announcement coming on that next week. So there's a lot happening in Meath football over the next couple of weeks that we'll keep an eye on.
Owen says, clearly Kerry might have a chip about XYZ being said about hypothetical, but so do Dublin, so do Galway, so do Mayo. This will be a fun few years in football. I mean, we all thought that though when the Dubs beat Kerry for the first time. It was like, oh, this is great. We've got Donegal, Mickey Hart's still there. It's not going away. This Mayo team are really good. And then Dublin just was like, no. There's age profile of that Kerry team, rising superstars. Think about how many players played badly for Kerry and they still kicked 20 points in an All-Ireland final. Come on, I don't think anybody's paying enough attention to this. Kerry are not going away anytime, anywhere soon.
I don't think you can say people aren't paying enough attention to Kerry right now. I think they've got their due credit, and maybe you're saying that they're not getting enough credit, Ger.
I am.
Amazing.
I think that
before anybody accuses me of Kerry bias,
I think they were really poor in the first half, and I think that was about the pressure. Like in the second half, when they started to play and were a little bit kind of less self-conscious, they played very well, and the game wasn't close. Like it was 4 points. It was. Kerry should have scored 2 goals at the end of the game, and actually were kind of running the ball down.
But the thing is, when their team was younger, they were actually better. It turned out, because that's what the substitutions were. It brought the average age down substantially at half time.
Yeah,
and so maybe that could support your argument.
Sure, look, we'll see, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about it. Tommy, good stuff. You're a happy man.
Thanks, lads. Thanks for allowing me to talk about Meath football in a positive light.
Really
and sorry, congratulations. You guys were nominated for the Irish Sports Podcast Awards.
Thank you. Yeah, it was lovely to be nominated. It was great to see that yesterday. It was class. Yeah,
will you win?
Class. Did we win?
Will you win?
Oh, will we win? There's serious competition there, Owen. So we're just going to put the head down and just do what we've been doing all season long, and hopefully that, we come out on the right side of it.
Who's your main rival? It's Niblock, isn't it?
There's the GA Social. There is. Trying to think now of
Niblock makes people cry. Tommy, you guys have had no tears.
That's what I've been saying to everyone, that we've no chance. Thomas makes everyone cry. I'm only joking. I think Paddy Anders described Thomas Niblock as the Oprah Winfrey of
he's got to win it then. Yeah.
So he's in the mix, so the pressure's on. And there's other great podcasts in the mix as well. I think an old colleague of ours, Neil Tracy, has his RT Rugby podcast in the mix. There's the Three Amigos podcast from Cork. And there's Al Foran's Goalmouth up in Goal Out upstairs. So there's other podcasts in the mix. But also, Ger, every podcast is available to win in the Listener's Choice Award. All you got to do is to go to the Irish Podcast Awards.ie/vote, search for your favourite podcast, i.e. OTB AM, and vote.
Oh, I didn't even know we were in it.
Yeah, everyone's in it now. Everyone can win in that one. So that's open to everyone.
We don't want you all to go to. Where was it again?
Irish Podcast Awards.ie.
We don't want you to go to Irish Podcast Awards.ie and pick our podcast.
Vote.
We definitely don't want that.
You should.
17 minutes past 8 this morning. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day.
Your 2022 Listener's Choice Winner of the Year podcast, OTB AM here.
After the break, we're live with the former Ireland captain Emma Byrne to review England's thumping semi-final win over Sweden last night. During the ad, you're going to hear Tommy, James and Paddy reflecting on the All-Ireland final in this week's Football Pod. Episode 30 of the Football Pod is available for your earballs right now.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Marginal gains, XG, top speed, recovery. What's it all about? Want to improve but don't know where to start? With more data than ever now available, OTB Sports have teamed up with Whoop to cut through the noise and help you raise your game, no matter the sport. OTB Sports are delivering the metrics that matter. Meaningful metrics in partnership with Whoop, the personalised digital fitness and health coach that helps you unlock your inner potential. See whoop.com for more. Follow OTB Sports social channels for the best insights and stats this season.
There were 2 massive moments that probably will go kind of under the radar. The first one was, I think it was the 64th minute. Teams were level. Galway pressed up on the kick out and Shane Ryan picks out Gavin White under the Hogan. Yeah. With an unbelievable kick out. Like, that's almost it's like a Ronan O'Gara moment. Roman O'Gara said I had to prepare myself to want to have the most pressureful situation in the match. And that's how I dealt with it. Like, Shane Ryan had the ball down there with everyone looking at him. Galway pressed up, level in the All-Ireland final, 5 minutes to go. Can I get this kick out off? And he pings one beautifully to Gavin White. I think Kerry get a score off it. That was unbelievable play. And then when Paul Murphy came on and Kerry were a few points up, they could have got tentative, maybe drawing the pressure on themselves. He hits Shawnee Shea with a backdoor cut, hand pass. Shawnee kind of shows to Paul Murphy in the middle of the field, and then he doubles in back behind I think Gavin White actually ends up fisting the ball over the bar.
Yeah.
But like those brave plays, like giving a backdoor cut hand pass last minute of an All-Ireland, like, is risky. It could have been turned over and they gone down the other way. But in 2 matches now, Paul has stepped up and done those risky passes that have paid off.
Yeah,
those two moments were big for Kerry.
Off the ball.
And he also said to ask him about the Hummer golf buggy I saw him driving in Portugal.
Yeah, well, the Hummer golf buggy, it wasn't mine, it was a friend of mine's, and I rented his place, and that was his buggy to get about. So yeah, it was interesting. I was trying to keep my head down at times, but it should be. It was a little bit, yeah. Not sure what Rick Keane would have made of it.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
At 20 minutes past 8 this morning, we're talking about the Euros last night, and England absolutely thumped Sweden 4-0. They're through to the final at Wembley. It's a sellout at the weekend, and It's Coming Home was playing on Sky Sports News in one of the ad breaks this morning. So Emma Byrne, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. How are we?
England are pretty good, really. All things considered, they are very, very good at the moment.
They are, and it was actually the first time I texted one of my former Arsenal teammates, and I went, "Okay, I'm saying it now. England are very good. That's it." And she replied, "I'm shocked you're saying this."
Yeah.
But yeah, they're very, very good. Very, very impressive from everybody on the bench, the management. It just looks like a very, very solid team at the moment.
Serena Wiegman, 19 games unbeaten, scored over 100 goals. So this isn't unexpected in some ways, but I think the quality of the performances and the absolute dominance they're showing so far, that is unexpected.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a great, build up to the tournament, and bringing Serena Wiegman in was just a fantastic idea from the FA. But I think what's more surprising is the fact that they can handle the pressure, they can soak up the pressure from oppositions, for me, that are simply better than them. And they soak up that pressure for them. They're able to manage the game very well, which is something we haven't seen from them. And then they know when to attack. And when they attack, they score their goals. So in general, all around, it's just a fantastic tournament for them. Plus, everybody's fit. Everybody's ready to play. It just seems like everything's right for them at the moment.
Massive Serena Wiegman fans in the house there with you, Emma, by the sounds of things. She was saying afterwards that this result will go all over Europe and the world. It was such a performance that tomorrow everyone will talk about us. She's kind of leaned into this idea that we're the favourites now. I presume they're going to be favourites for the final, depending on what happens tonight. But they're not playing this down because there's nothing else you can do as England manager when the hype starts to build, but just lean into it as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much parrying off you can do. And, managers do it all the time. They always say they're not the favourites. They always want to go into the game as the underdogs. And Serena Wiegman's team might have been able to do that a little bit, but not anymore. I mean, they've just shown that they're able to dominate games. You can just feel the atmosphere in the stadiums, the countries behind them. They have to accept it and go with it now at this stage, and maybe that can give them even more confidence going into the final if they can deal with it well.
Can I ask you about the Russo goal last night? It looks incredible, but I want to get your perspective on it from the goalkeeper's standpoint, because it's a split-second thing. I presume as a goalkeeper you end up feeling a little bit foolish, but it is very, very hard to do anything about it when you don't expect the player to backheel it.
Yeah, I mean, I actually felt really sorry for Lindell as a goalkeeper myself, because it's a really difficult shot to handle, because what would have been going through Lindell's mind is, where's she going to go next? She had her back to goal, so she's going to think she's going to lay it off, or, she has to be aware of the dangerous players around her. You never expect someone to backheel it from there. It's the cheekiest thing I've seen in a semi-finals, and it was just a fantastic goal. There's not much Lindell could have done. She just looks a little bit silly, which is why I feel a bit sorry for her, because it went through her legs. But at the end of the day, it's similar to when someone takes a shot and a player lets it go through their legs and you look silly because you haven't gone for it. You're expecting it to come off someone else, or you're expecting it to go somewhere else. And was just, you have to give credit to Russo and not look at the goalkeeper there.
100%. Like when you're training, obviously, I presume it's like a balance between trying to make your body as big as possible and not getting nutmegged when you're going one-on-one. Again, this is just a freak occurrence last night because of the backheel nature of it. So I'm talking here more about one-on-one situations when a striker is bearing down on goal.
Yeah, I mean, a different situation, you have to try and make yourself as big as possible, and doing that realistically is legs out, arms out, but you can't do that because of the nutmeg situation. So you always have your legs close together, and also it's the worst thing, especially in training. Everybody loves it and it drives me insane. But anyway, I turn into a bit of a crazy woman when someone does that to me. And it's what players always look to do because they like the flair and they like, it's probably the easiest way to go through, not around, to go through a goalkeeper. But in general, when you're defending in a 1v1 situation, you try to keep your legs closer together. As well as that, you can move quicker, you can adjust quicker when your legs are together. But in this situation, Linda was just getting set, and I think she was thinking about what the next phase of play. She definitely wasn't expecting that.
Mm. Why were they able to dominate this game after Spain caused them so many difficulties?
I think it was just key moments in the game, and I don't think they dominated the game at the start. I think Sweden dominated the game, and I think Sweden looked more likely to score. And at this stage of the tournament, and at this stage in women's football in general, the standard has risen so much that if you don't take your chances, or if you don't, turn the screw at key moments, it allows the other team to get back in the game. And it's what England are doing extremely well, which is the surprising fact for me. They haven't done that before. They found it very difficult to get back on top of the game. But now what they're doing is they're soaking up that pressure. They're riding their luck a little bit. Sweden should have been 1-0 up in the first 10 minutes. Didn't happen. They had 2 chances. They didn't score them. And then England were able to get back up on top. And then before the half, Beth Mead, she did nothing all game. We weren't speaking about her all game. And then she just had that one key moment and put the ball away. That's what this tournament is about now, just taking those chances. And then when you take them, being able to stay strong at the back, which England have done extremely well as well. And then, of course, you just grind them down. And England have been just grinding teams down. We've seen it in the Spain game. Spain were a better team. They dominated in possession. They should have scored in key moments. They didn't. And again, England just were able to nick those moments from them and then come out on top.
What would a victory in this competition do for football in England? I don't know if you saw the scenes from Kerry. It's such a long time since Kerry won. It's a whole 8 years, Emma. But you could see the generations passing on to the next generation, and all the kids are there. They're getting their pictures taken. David Clifford is walking amongst them, and he's a god. Like Beth Mead is going to be a god whenever they're celebrating the trophy if they win it. So what kind of a momentum shifter and game changer would it be for women's football?
It's huge. I mean, they've already had success in that count, already. Just the fact that they're filling the stadiums and they're playing nice football, everyone's enjoying it. So it's already been a success. But if they win it, it's just, it just is going to completely rule sports for the next year. We're going to be talking about the women's team winning the Euros. We're going to be talking about, the success they've had. Little kids are going to be talking about in school. It's a huge thing for England, and as far as I'm concerned, Ireland, because we've got such a close link with them as well. A lot of our girls, are watching BBC at home in Ireland. They're watching this, and it's just fantastic to see. And for a team that's quite close to ours to be able to win something like that gives us a bit of motivation as well. But in general, I think for the FA as well, it shows that what they've been doing over the last 15 years has been the right thing, and the investments they've been putting in and the different structures that they've been implementing, it's just proved that it's working.
Speaking of Ireland, does Sweden's performance give you any concern that Finland might actually do them in September, and as a result Ireland could be in trouble? Because I think we forget that. I think we've kind of assumed that Sweden are just going to beat them in September.
Not really, judging on, Finland, they're a good team. I've enjoyed watching them play as well. They're quite a strong team, but I do think Sweden are a lot stronger. I think this will probably give them even more of a bite to go and beat Finland. They didn't perform. I don't think they've had a great tournament. They certainly won't be happy with their performance yesterday. And I'm hoping that'll give them a kick up the backside, so to speak, and then go and hammer Finland, because we need them to do that. I'm not really worried about that. Sweden are a better team. They're a professional team. And a lot of the players are playing in Champions League, which they need to prepare for as well. So they'll be flying fit going into the game against Finland.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Just one other thing then on England. I mean, you would have been playing there obviously when they were in their last major final, which was 2009. They ended up getting hammered in that final by Germany. 6-2 was the full-time score that time. Was the hype around that England team, relatively speaking, was the hype at a similar level and the expectation at a similar level in 09? Obviously, the home thing is a big difference.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't at all. And there were so many weaknesses in that England team that you kind of knew that Germany were going to pick them apart. They were lucky to get to the final, probably didn't really deserve to be there. But this year is completely different. They deserve to be there. They're playing excellent football. They have maybe one slight weakness in the left back position in Rachel Daly. But again, last night she proved that she is very capable of playing there. So for me, very, very few weaknesses, including the goalkeeper with Mary Earps, who I probably wasn't the biggest fan of at the start of the tournament. But again, she's proved that she deserves to be there and she can play at that level. She's a top goalkeeper. So going into this final is different. And I feel like the manager as well, she's so confident. You nearly feel safe with her. It shows on the pitch. The players are very confident. They trust in her process. And they all know exactly what their job is. And with that kind of information coming as well, with extremely good technical and tactical organisation, they'll be very prepared against Germany. And it just makes a huge difference to these players.
So I sense that you've called tonight's semi-final.
Yeah. Have you changed your tune? Because I think you were very pro-France early in the tournament.
No, do you know what? I don't know. It's just this morning I'm just thinking England, Germany, but I actually don't. I still am going with France. I'm still going with France. But they always let me down. And, they've gone very farther than they've gone before in this tournament. And I've just seen the level. It seems like the players they aren't. For example, Gaoro, fantastic in the first game, has just slightly slipped down throughout the games, and I can see that happening. I'm just hoping they've woken up this morning, because I want to be right. I want France to win, to be quite honest, and I hope they perform like they can, because we're always talking about France going out of the tournament having a poor performance and not played as well as they can. At least if they're not going to go forward, I just hope Germany were just the better side and not the fact that France didn't perform.
And who matches up better against England, do you think?
Who would England want, or?
Well, more, who do you think would actually have a better chance of beating England?
Oh, I actually think Germany.
Right.
I know I'm like totally contradicting myself. If you were to put money on it, I would put money on Germany quicker than I would France. Just because you don't know how France are going to wake up in the morning, and you can't really depend on them. I wouldn't entrust my money in them, put it that way.
It's mad how that's been a part of all French sporting culture. Like, you think of the men's team, like the 82 World Cup, the 86 World Cup. It wasn't until 98 when they eventually get over that. The 94 World Cup qualifiers, and so maybe the women need to go through that journey and just have that kind of self-confidence that actually they can win this thing. And who knows, maybe this team is the one to do it.
Yeah, they have the players, but it's like the men's team, they have the players. It's just, I don't know whether it's an attitude going into a game or, they're too individual. Because they have the players also who can be stand up and be accounted for. But they are quite individual players. And that's one thing I'd be worried about, the fact that they struggle to play as a team. And then all the crap that's going on off the pitch as well with them, rumours that it's not a happy camp, they're all arguing and stuff like that. That's certainly not going to help, is it?
I wonder, has the situation at Paris Saint-Germain somehow managed to find its way to the national team as well? Can I just ask you about one thing, right? If Sarina Wiegman is so good, is she so good because she's really good, or is she also so good in comparison with what Phil Neville was doing before that?
No, it just, I mean, you can't really talk about Phil Neville. You can talk about just a manager coming in and being very, very confident and just how they manage the players. What's happened is she's gone in there and she has just convinced all the players that she knows exactly what she's doing and they trust her and it's working. It's just a combination of everything, players at the right time, in the right form. You know, it's just a bit of luck as well. Like, she has the players, she knows the players she wants. She's been very, very brave in some of her decisions and keeping the team, which I think has helped her, whereas Phil Neville didn't. He changed it a lot and he might have succumbed to pressure a little bit with players. And Sarina Wiegman seems to know exactly what players she wants in there, and that's not going to change, which she has for me, the biggest decision to make now for her in the final is whether to play Alessia Russo or Ellen White. And, you know, even with that, Ellen White wasn't playing for City. She hasn't played for City, hasn't been a regular for City all season. Another manager wouldn't have started her. They would have started someone who's playing and in form. And Wiegman didn't do that. And I think it worked out. I really like Ellen White. I think she's a great addition to the team. But she has to make a decision now because Alessia Russo is banging on that door. And, you know, I tweeted last night about, it's not about, it's the best for the team. I don't mind being on the bench. That's not true. That's absolutely not true. They want to start. I know Russo, I played with her at Birmingham. I played with her at Brighton Hove and Albion. She's very, very ambitious. She wants to play. She wants to score. She's not going to want to sit on the bench. She wants to start. And I think she's probably proved that she should.
It's a good situation to be in when the competition is so high that somebody scores like an all-time worldie and they're not quite sure of a place in the team. Just one last question on Phil Neville then. It seems like it was such a weird decision in retrospect to give it to somebody who didn't actually know enough and wasn't properly qualified, that they just, for whatever reason, it's like such a low wattage celebrity football person that they gave it to him, when actually giving the job to the right person who comes in and has an overarching plan and has experience and understands the opposition really well has been hugely beneficial to them.
Yeah, and, you know, I think it was at the point in time in women's football where there was a bit of a shift. It was on the way up. There was building that community of fans. And I think it was just a case of having someone, coming from men's football and, he's a big player, played at United. I think that's what they felt they needed just to kind of boost it again even more. I don't think he was the right person for the job, but, he did a job. And for me, it kind of gained a little bit more interest because he was there. And unfortunately, that's what had to happen. But now I think women's football is a standalone. It can, we don't need to do that anymore. It has to go to, jobs have to be given. It's not just filling quotas. They have to be given to the best person for the job. And women's football can afford to do that now because we've gained that fan base and it's only going to grow from here. So
it sounds like you're expecting football to come home and trying to make some peace with that in advance. Is that the correct summation of how you're feeling? Trying to make peace with it, but it's going to be a great thing. The way I look at it, it's a great thing for Ireland as well. And I've always said it, as much as, yes, I want the league in Ireland to improve, and it's a shame that players have to move abroad, but I've said it since day one. The only way we're going to improve as a nation, as a country, is if we push players to play in better leagues, to play with better players so they can improve and then come back to the Irish team like we did when we were 18 years old. We didn't want to leave. We didn't want to leave our families, but we did it because we knew we were going to improve as players, and we did. So for me, it's going to have a knock-on effect. It's going to improve football in our country for the national team. We're going to try and push players to play in the WSL. One last thing as well, the fact that this is a COVID delayed and the World Cup rolls out straight away next year, it's never actually been better. And in that way, I can totally see how England winning this is going to be a massive surge of interest in the WSL and in our players, and hopefully we qualify for the World Cup next year. And in that instance, you can totally see how this is a rolling ball of momentum for Irish football.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it always has been. There always has been a little knock-on effect with us. But now it's just massive because we're exploiting women's football and everybody can watch it. And, everybody knows what's going on in Ireland with the English League, which might not have been the case when I was playing. So obviously it's going to have a knock-on effect. And, everybody's interested. It's like when Wimbledon's on, everyone's out playing tennis on the road. Well, I was anyway. And now football is on the telly. Everybody can watch it, and even at home, everybody's talking about it. My dad's watching all the games. He's complaining about this player, that player. So of course, it's going to have a knock-on effect. And the fact that it's rolling on to the World Cup, the qualifiers in September, I think is a great thing. So nobody has a chance to relax and start watching something else.
The pre-sale for the women's tickets for Ireland-Finland went on sale yesterday, and there's a big push to get Tallaght full for it, and a home full stadium. If we win that game, it doesn't really matter what the Finns will do after that. So hopefully that's the inspiration that everybody takes and they get out and they make a lot of noise in Tallaght on that night. Great to have you with us, Emma. Enjoy the rest of the tournament as much as you can. Cheers.
Thanks guys. Bye.
It's Emma Byrne, always great. Talking to us about the situation last night. If you haven't seen the football, get on Twitter or wherever you can find the goal and have a look at Alessia Russo's goal. It was absolutely sensational. A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. John Duggan, good morning to you. How are you?
Ger and Eoin, are we well?
I'm pretty good, yeah. I'm not as good as Owen. He's kind of in the post-high crash, but he's like always constantly aware that at any point he can just wrap himself in the warm blanket of an All-Ireland.
It's a nice feeling, John.
What was the party like?
It was good, yeah. Again, I said this yesterday, but I think that people maybe think it was more outrageous than it really was.
It is good, is the correct tense.
Yeah, should have...
Have you lost anything? Have you lost your phone or your clothes or anything?
Nothing.
No, that only happens after demoralising defeats to Rome. The phone is what I lost there, just to be clear to people at home, not the clothes.
Was Barry Lennon out with you?
He was, and I'm sure he's still out somewhere. I'm sure he's down below in Kerry somewhere at the moment.
Any kind of poems or anything for the internet?
No, not this time. Not this time. I think he went too viral for his own liking last time. Between Twitter and TikTok, over 100,000 people saw his poetry after the semi-final. So I think he decided that it would be best to keep a lower profile. But I do believe there was a bit of poetry recited beside Sam Maguire yesterday afternoon in an establishment in Killarney, and I was told not to share the video.
Can you see now what even the Kerry Mafia have their own press their own press protocols when it comes to this stuff?
Yeah, it was literally like, you can speak to Barry in a second. It just and 3 questions, please.
Yeah, no, that's it. Time up.
8 years. What was the best bit for you of the whole thing?
Oh, of the whole season?
The whole day and the whole last couple of days.
I think just maybe the full-time whistle and just kind of everybody congregating in the Cusack stand in kind of the one spot, kind of looking around at people that you've kind of like gone to pre-season matches with, you've gone to league matches with, and it's kind of like thinking that actually all those crappy days that you're out are actually culminated in an All-Ireland. Not that they're crappy days out, because they're actually sometimes far more enjoyable than days out in Croke Park even. So yeah, that's that kind of feeling of culmination, that all the kind of miles travelled during the year was actually dots along the line on a path to winning an All-Ireland.
Was it Jason Foley's parents you met at one of those pre-season games?
Yeah, Temple Toohey in the second pre-season game. Like the first pre-season game, I remember we couldn't get into because of COVID, and it was unavailable online. There was a streaming service that just couldn't provide it online. And the second game was Temple Toohey in January. Stunning
Where is
evening.
Temple Toohey?
Tipperary.
Okay.
And a publican kind of let us in the back of the pub afterwards and all that for a chat with the locals. And that night Shawnee Shea just kind of came onto the pitch looking burlier than ever. He's playing midfield, and Tyke Morley was playing sweeper. We kind of noticed it that night for the first time, and we were trying to spot Paddy Tally on the sideline. And those two things would turn out to be pretty significant. Those two players would be fairly significant as the year went on. Those they're always nice, but the majority of the years, especially in recent times, it kind of leads to disappointment at the end of the year. So you try and soak in those league nights and days as much as you possibly can, because they're good moments too.
Jack O'Connor deserves a serious credit. It's interesting. I was behind the goal at the Davin stand end, quite high up, so you really see the game from a different perspective when you're seeing the play like this. From behind the goal.
That's actually a great ticket.
Yeah, so the kick out is just so important in Gaelic football, and It was quite a nuanced tactical game. You really get the sense of the fact that it is possession-based game and teams don't want to give away frees. So their best chance of getting something out of it is to get a turnover. But the possession is just so important, and you realise how important the kick-out is. And I felt Kerry did much better in that regard. Shane Walsh, though, it was virtuoso stuff from him, and you just see the angles and you see the way he was able to cut balls over the bar. It was fascinating. Don't see as much on the other end, obviously, but you could really see the impact of the Kerry bench.
No, and that's why the big screen is important, and that's why replays are really important. You know, for those tickets where you can't see the other end of the pitch. And look, as I said earlier, they're getting better at it. They're still not perfect. But yeah, right. Sorry, just two things in the paper. I hadn't seen this, and I'm like, what? Tyson Fury is in talks over a return to the ring in an exhibition bout. Do you know? Have you seen this?
No.
Have you seen this? Have you seen this?
No.
In an exhibition bout, is there one name in the world that would shock you the most for this?
Anthony Joshua?
If I was to tell you he's been in studio with us.
Oh, the Mountain.
Hafthor Bjornsson is going to fight Tyson Fury.
Wow.
Well, that will be like, wow.
Will it be in the Middle East?
It would be a bit of fun, Fury said, and very, very rich. It would be great to get in there in front of, say, 70,000 fans and just make bank.
Is it boxing or MMA?
I don't know. I guess it couldn't be boxing. Could it?
Yeah. Well, like wasn't that the whole? Hafthor was in here talking like using first name basis as if like we're buddies or something. He was in here talking about MMA, wasn't he? That was the whole point of the interview.
Well, he said he
McGregor
would fight McGregor. Yeah, he said he would crush McGregor.
Oh yeah, that was it. Yeah, he'd crush his skull. Could he crush Tyson Fury's skull?
Don't think so.
No, he's got a stronger bone.
Bit of a more even fight, wouldn't it?
Yeah, certainly size-wise they'd match up a little bit more. Unless they just like run the gauntlet and it's like kind of like a triple threat. They do like one boxing, one weightlifting contest, and one MMA fight. So he's the winner of all three.
Like a sports stars type thing.
That's it. Yeah. Is he still the strongest man in the world?
I doubt it now. That was a good 5-6 years ago, wasn't it?
Probably stronger.
5 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. You can't rest on your laurels as the strongest man. You know, there's always some youngster coming up behind you.
Yeah.
Eating 15 chicken breasts for breakfast.
That's it. Yeah.
The Telegraph are doing a thing about 10 years since the London Olympics, and like I don't, the spirit of the London Olympics and all that great time when everything was happening. I mean, I certainly think the Seoul Olympics, the aftermath of that, you know, the dirtiest race in history, but that happened really quickly. So there was no opportunity for Seoul to build this pretense that it had an incredible legacy. But Lord Coe, as the Telegraph referred to him, said that Ferguson had agreed to take the Team GB football team.
Right.
Which is a bit like Brian Cody taking that All-Stars team that The Rock was talking about yesterday.
That was a good story.
And giving advice to The Rock.
Half hung over and
close him down there.
Damien Hayes.
Like it's so I presume the Telegraph are saying, let's remember the greatest moment in the history of our empire.
Now they're finding like, how much of a legacy did it really leave?
Yeah, but like, did you hear Ian Wright last night after the game in Sheffield? Like he was talking about the legacy of this tournament for football in general, and he says that there's no legacy from this, like what happened with the Olympics. Then what are we doing? And I haven't heard too many people on the BBC kind of like front up and say there was no legacy from the Olympic Games, and I think there's probably maybe a few people waking up to that fact.
Yeah, we got a good legacy out of Katie Taylor, obviously, and probably the only legacy over there is West Ham United Football Club. Has a stadium, don't they?
Yeah, they did really good out of it. They're going to become
stadium, their fans
potentially a Champions League team in the future on the basis of the stadium that they got. What about Brian Cody, John? You were on air when the news broke.
Yeah, it was like a bomb going off, to be honest. You're in the operating theatre then, and we were delighted to be able to have people good enough to give us their time, like John Kiley and Nicky Brennan and Brian Hogan. I interviewed Brian Cody in 1999, his first season in charge. He had to beat Laois and was there for ringside seat for the whole lot. The ruthlessness of Kilkenny not only was about Brian Cody's selection, it was about the way they would put teams to bed by going for goals. I remember back at the Limerick game in 2007, within 10 minutes they'd kill Limerick. The way they beat Tipperary in the 4-in-a-row game with those 2 quick goals, and they were never afraid to go for it. As much as Brian Cody, as a fullback of the past, was all about intense work rate in terms of defensive play. But to be able to go and make 3 or 4 teams out of it, and you'd have like legends of Kilkenny that would maybe be sidelined closer before their time. Peter Barry would be the main man, and then he wouldn't be, and then Charlie Carter would be the guy, and he wouldn't be, and then Brian Hogan would be the guy, and as you were saying, then he was dropped for the 2014 replay. And I think for a lot of the players, some of them accepted it more than others, but it was just part of the bargain that the only thing that matters here is Kilkenny hurling and winning as a result of that. And if you're good enough to be in the 15, you are, and if you're not, you're not. So not all counties were necessarily run that way, but Brian was able to do it, even to the extent where it just feels to me that even the way he leaves now, it doesn't seem that like all political careers end in failure. It doesn't seem like Kilkenny is a failure at the moment. It seems that they got very, very close to an exceptional Limerick team within 2 points. So whoever takes over now will have a lot to work with, I think, especially with those younger defenders coming into the team. And a lot of the players that played against Limerick hadn't played in the All-Ireland final before. So what can you say? 11 All-Irelands, 18 Leinsters, 10 leagues.
It's not bad.
Nicky Brennan was just talking about like that the Walsh Cup. He'd take the Walsh Cup really seriously because it's just about winning in every way. So, you can make your arguments for Mick O'Dwyer going to Laois and Kildare and doing what he did, or Jim Gavin winning 5 in a row and only losing once. But Cody's teams, like, they won 6 out of 7. They won 6 out of 7, and every time they had a setback, they were able to renew. Apart from the last few years, but maybe didn't have the conveyor belt of talent that he did once have.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's a bit of news this morning. I don't know if you've gone through that story in the front of the Irish Times, that the RFU facing a case from former players over claims they suffered brain injuries during their careers. These are unnamed players, Dublin-based solicitors, Maguire McLafferty's taking the lawsuit on behalf of those unnamed players. Their action separate to the one being pursued in the UK. We also have Tayo Adaramola joining Coventry City. So he's the Republic of Ireland under-21 international, left wing back on a season-long loan from Crystal Palace. The 18-year-old started his career with St. Kevin's Boys. And I don't know if you know that story about that horse yesterday, the winner of the big race, Magic Chicago. The horse box broke down on the way to Galway, but they managed to get there and they won the big race. Horse is only bought for just 12.5 grand by a syndicate in Meath, and won the Colin Quinn BMW Mile under Colin Keane for small trainer Brian Duffy. So the Galway Plate is today, folks, 6:40. Competitive race, maybe Fire Attack might be one for a euro each way if you're looking just for Brian's horse. Won a Punchestown last time out, might have a bit in hand.
All right. John, good stuff.
All right,
Thanks
folks.
for that.
Thank you.
More from John D, from JD on Twitter, and of course on Saturday afternoon as well on Off the Ball on News Talk. It is 8:52. A reminder, OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Now, we've got a new slot. It's called You Had to Be There, where we're asking journalists to give us 5 of the greatest moments of individual brilliance that they've seen while they were working or while they were football fans. That actually makes you forget that you're there for work. And I'm delighted to say we have renowned football journalist Jonathan Wilson with us for the very first one of these. Jonathan, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
This is great. You've put together a list which is perfectly in our wheelhouse for those of us of a certain age, and I am delighted as a Villa fan to see that one of my favourite players is on your list here. Mark Bosnich is number 1 here.
Well, I've done them in chronological order, to be fair. I hadn't actually ranked them 1 to 5.
Fair enough.
And I should also say I was at that game as a Sunderland fan. So it was, Sunderland against Villa in the League Cup in 93-4. And Villa, of course, went on to win the League Cup that year. Sunderland were second flight side at the time. They'd beaten Leeds in the previous round, who were then a Premier League club. And I think that first half at Roker Park is as well as I've ever seen Sunderland play. And at half-time, they're 2-0 down, because Bosnich just produced a string of ludicrous saves. So there was a Gordon Armstrong header from close range, he tipped over. Then the really great save was a looping header from Phil Gray. So Sunderland had Phil Gray and Don Goodman up front. I think that was the first season they'd really sort of clicked as a partnership. And this looping header, and I was right in line with it behind it in the full end. And the pace which Bosnich got across his goal and then flung himself up to just tip it over, I think that's the best save I've ever seen in the flesh. Absolutely astonishing. The technical ability of the foot movement to work out what he needs to do, and then the athleticism to spring up there. And Sunderland ended up losing the game 4-1. But Ron Atkinson, the Villa manager, said afterwards, there's only one team out there, and they end up getting beat. So I think it can be difficult at times to pick out one individual performance, particularly now when the game is so team-oriented. And I think that's why goalkeepers kind of fit this sort of pattern quite well. And Bosnich that day was just absolutely unbeatable.
It's funny because like he was actually great that whole season, and there's just a period of his career at Villa where he's really sensational at stopping shots, and actually has a period where he saves loads of penalties and wins penalty shootouts for Villa. And I don't know, was he in the top rank of goalkeepers at that time, or was there some kinks in his game that prevented him from being thought of as like absolute top tier?
I think at that time, because he was still pretty young then, wasn't he? He could only have been early 20s. And I think there's definitely a sense that he was going to go on to great things. Obviously, he did go to Manchester United, where he's one of those many goalkeepers who sort of struggled in the post-Schmeichel shadow. So I think certainly that mid-90s period, you just said he was in the top sort of 5 or 6 in the Premier League, or Premiership as it was then, with the potential to go on to far greater. And the strange thing is, I now do a bit of work with him on Australian TV, and I mentioned this game, and he sort of said nobody ever talks about this game. Nobody saw it. You had to be a Sunderland fan or a Villa fan to watch it, because why would you be watching Sunderland v Villa? And I'd looked up this game on YouTube a while ago, in fact when I first started working with Mark Bosnich, just to see if he had been as good as I remembered it, and I couldn't find it. So I was sort of thinking, does the footage even exist? But it is there now on YouTube as a 10-minute highlights package where you see, I mean, that's save from Armstrong, save from Gray. Then there's another one from Gray when he gets off his line very quickly. Gray tries to dink it over him, and Bosnich just sort of thrusts up an arm and blocks it. And so, he was absolutely as good as I remembered him being.
It's a pretty exciting Aston Villa team. It has peak Tony Daly. It has Dalian Atkinson just like feeling himself as well. And it's kind of, Big Ron's flamboyant football, representative of him as a man and a character.
Yeah, and that first goal, the first Villa goal, which I was pretty much the first time Villa got in the Sunderland half, is I think it's Kevin Richardson plays the ball through, and it's a classic counter attack. But you sort of see the difference in finishing between a really good side and a first division side as was then. So Atkinson's sort of running on a slight diagonal right to left, and I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with Alec Chamberlain, Sunderland keeper's positioning. But he just sort of slices across it, and it's sort of this little it's sort of slightly the outside of his right foot, sort of a little jab, and Chamberlain, his whole weight goes the wrong way, and the ball pings in the bottom corner, and you just sort of think, God, that's proper finishing. That's what we're lacking. So I mean, Atkinson that game was great. Ray Houghton came for bench and scored very quickly, and obviously getting towards the end of his career by then, but helped knit things together in midfield. I think Paul McGrath was still there at the back, wasn't he, in that team? So it was a classic Big Ron side, wasn't it?
Totally.
It was flamboyant, great to watch, but maybe lacking consistency you need to win the biggest prizes.
Paul McGrath and Steve Staunton, possibly?
He's definitely on the books. I'm not sure if he's playing that game.
I can't remember that. I'm pretty sure McGrath was playing against Phil Gray.
It looks like Earl Barrett's at left back for whatever reason. So you've also got Niall Quinn, number 2 on the list.
Yeah, well, partly appealing to the audience, but I remember when Sunderland signed Niall Quinn, and I think his debut was away against Nottingham Forest, which was the first away game of the Premier League season in 96-7. And he was brilliant that day, and Sunderland won 4-1. I think there might even have been 4-0 up at half time. And then I think he played sort of 8 league games and then got his knee injury. And I like a lot of Sunderland fans. I mean, the game I'm talking about is when Sunderland beat Chelsea 4-1, and I was actually working at that game. It was one of my first games as a journalist. But I was at that Forest game as a fan. But I remember sort of pretty quickly, a couple of months into that first season of 96-7, becoming pretty disillusioned and thinking, oh God, this guy's so slow. Why have we signed him? He's clearly, whatever he had at City, he's lost. And it took him a couple of years to get that properly diagnosed and sorted out. And then I was away at university, so I wasn't watching Sunderland live that often, and started to hear from mates who were going that actually this guy's really good, and I couldn't quite sort of believe it. And I remember sort of him scoring in an away defeat and sort of thinking, oh God, that's going to keep him in the side for another half dozen games. That's not what we wanted. And then I went to see Sunderland away at QPR, and he scored one and had two disallowed and was sensational. And I was sort of like, okay, that's the play he should have been with if he hadn't had the knee injury. And then those two 97-8, 98-9, the first two seasons when he was together with Kevin Phillips, they were brilliant together. 98-9, Phillips was actually injured for a lot of the season, which people forget, and Quinn and Michael Bridges and Danny Dichio carried it. And then that first season up in the Premier League, Sunderland got beat 4-0 at Stamford Bridge on the opening day. And then there's this game beginning of December when Quinn absolutely destroys Marcel Desailly. And that was the first game. I think Sunderland were third off the back of that win. But that was the first game where I sort of thought, actually, maybe they genuinely are quite good. They're not just sort of riding this euphoric wave. And the other astonishing thing about that game was the middle of midfield. They had Eric Roy, a sort of unheard of French midfielder, and Paul Thirlwell, a local kid. They had Kevin Ball was out. The whole of the normal midfield. I think Stefan Schwartz must have been out as well. The whole of that central midfield. Alex Ray wasn't there. Was missing. And so, very low expectations. And Sunderland took the lead in, I think the second minute. And that first half, they absolutely destroyed Chelsea. Desailly, he played the next week, so he wasn't injured, but he was substituted at half-time because he just couldn't handle Quinn.
Why was he so good? What was it? Goal scoring? Was it assisting? Was it just control of the ball? What was it?
Well, he scored twice, and I think he set up the other two. So he got that goal after 2 minutes, which is Eric Roy, a totally uncharacteristic sort of dribble through the middle and squared it, and Quinn pokes it in. But it was his movement. I think it was Frank Leboeuf playing alongside Desailly. So you sort of assume Quinn would have a go at Leboeuf as being the less physically imposing, but he didn't. He picked on Desailly. So it was his movement dragging him out of position. It was, I think, the thing with Quinn that people who didn't watch him regularly perhaps don't quite appreciate is how good his chest control and his first touch was. So he didn't have much pace. That's the one criticism. But a player that size is never going to have much pace. So I think it's the third goal is a diagonal ball in from the right that he takes down at the back post, and it's a little side foot volley. And he scored a load of goals like that. It was a goal he scored in the League Cup against Luton, this brilliant sort of lob volley having taken on his chest. And it could have been this brilliant chest control volley. And Ed Dehuey makes a very good save, and Phillips follows it in. Then he gets the fourth, which is this. It's a corner, comes across the back post. It sort of missed everybody, and it's a very controlled volley into the far post. So he doesn't just lash it; he places this volley, and so it was a day when I guess he knew physically he was overmanning the guy he was up against, but also all of that technical ability was also right at the highest level. And there's a moment in the second half, which again, I haven't been able to find footage of, but I'm pretty sure it happened. I mean, I've found my notes from that day where I've written it down, that Sunderland got a throw on the right and Quinn and Phillips pass the ball to each other twice. And then I think it's Quinn hits the volley. So the ball doesn't touch the ground from this throw-in to Quinn hitting the volley, and it hits the outside of the post. And if that had gone in, it would have been one of the greatest of all goals. And I think between them, Quinn and Phillips scored something like 149 goals over those 3 seasons, which, if you strike bang, to be banging in 50 between them each season on average is incredible.
Does the fact that there is no video footage make this even more special, Jonathan, that you can be like, I was there and you'll never get to see it?
Well, but part of me thinks, have I just made it up as my brain sort of somehow conjured that? I'm very glad I've still got the notes I took at the time. And those were the days when you did take handwritten notes. You weren't just like knocking it all down on your laptop. But yes, it does. That in my head, it was this incredibly pure bit of movement. And I'm sure in reality, it was sort of slightly scruffier than that. But yeah, and you sort of, the third goal as well, you sort of think of the goal it could have been if Ed Dehuey hadn't made that save. And I remember it being, a real sort of scrambling, diving save. You only just get fingertips to it, and obviously can't get enough power on the save to push it away. But that could have been a really stunning stunning goal, which, as I say, Quinn scored a load of those volleys that I think he probably doesn't quite get credit for.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think probably because of his involvement in football afterwards, we've forgotten just what a great footballer he was, especially here because he's a central figure in Saipan and all that too. But anyway, John Kennedy is number 3. This is unheralded for a lot of people. Barcelona 0, Celtic 0 in the UEFA Cup, 4th round second leg in 2004. What was so good about John Kennedy's performance?
I think it was so unexpected. So to set the scene, Celtic had obviously reached the UEFA Cup final in 2003, lost to Jose Mourinho's Porto, and following Celtic, or covering Celtic at that time was a brilliant thing. The atmosphere at Parkhead was always great. That was Martin O'Neill's team, really exciting, attacking, dynamic football. Celtic away fans obviously were always very, very noisy as well. And so I'd been at the first leg, and there'd been some problem with my accreditation. So I ended up stuck behind the goal, just with the fans, which is never ideal when you're balancing a laptop on your knee. But Celtic, I can't remember when they get the goal, but anyway, the second half, Thiago Motta is sent off. And as he goes off, I'm trying to work out how Barcelona are rearranging themselves. And this is for, 10, 15 minutes in the second half. And I'm sort of going around, I'm thinking, there's only 9 players there. I can't work. And going, only 9. So I said to the bloke next to us, can you just count the Barcelona players, tell me how many there are? And he's, there's only 9. Wonder what's going on. So I rang a friend in the press box and said, how come Barcelona have got 9 men? And he went, Rab Douglas and Saviola were sent off at half-time for fighting in the tunnel. And because Celtic were defending the other end, we hadn't realised that Marshall was on for Douglas, and Celtic were also down to 10 before the sending off. So it was 9v10 in the second half. Celtic win it 1-0. Go to Barcelona. So they've got Marshall in goal, who was a kid at the time. So I could have picked him. I didn't want to pick 2 keepers. And they end up, I think Bubba Baldo was suspended as well. So John Kennedy comes in as an 18-year-old. And the first 20 minutes of this game, Barcelona absolutely battered them. And Marshall makes a couple of really good saves. But you realise that about halfway through the first half that Barcelona is starting to lose hope. And one of the reasons for that is that Kennedy has totally taken Ronaldinho out the game. And there's one tackle in particular, I remember, midway through the first half, where it looks like Ronaldinho's got past him and he just stretches out a leg and just clips the ball away. And then from then on, it was as if that tackle gave him confidence, and his performance from then was incredibly mature. And I remember watching that, and Celtic ended up holding out pretty comfortably once they'd survived that initial storm, hold out pretty comfortably for a 0-0 to go through. And I remember thinking, right, Marshall and Kennedy, these 2 kids are both brilliant, and they're both going to go on to have great careers. And unfortunately, Kennedy got crocked by the Romanian Ger and Eoin, and was never really the same again. But he did have that one performance as an 18-year-old in the Camp Nou where he was absolutely out of this world and knocked Ronaldinho out the game.
Did you know that there is a footballer currently playing for Fluminense called John Kennedy? He was born in the early 2000s, so potentially named after that moment where the temporary Fluminense star was marked out of it.
I mean, I think there's maybe a more famous John Kennedy he might be named after, but I'd love to believe that's true.
We'll do some digging and try and find out. Next on our list is Andre Ayew for Ghana against Tunisia in the Cup of Nations in 2012.
Yeah, so I remember interviewing Ayew's father, Abedi Pele, in Ghana when the Cup of Nations was there in 2008. And he was talking about his 2 kids and how good they were and how excited he was by them. And 2010 in Angola, that Ghana side, really good young side. I mean, Samuel Nkum, Agiman Badu, Kwadu Asamoah Jan, really good side. Got to the final, lost to that very good Egypt team. And so there was sort of high expectations of them in Equatorial and Gabon in 2012. And they sort of struggled slightly to get going in the group stage, and they played Tunisia in the quarterfinal. And Tunisia, I mean, particularly back then, were always a very sort of very organised, very hard to play against. There'd always be all kinds of chicanery going on. They were a hard team to love, whereas that Ghana had a lot of life about them. And Ghana take the lead early on. A corner that's flicked on, and John Mensah who actually went on to play for Sunderland, scores with a back post header. Tunisia then, against the run of play, equalised just for half-time through Sada Khalifa. And then Ghana absolutely battered them. And it's Ayew leading everything. Everything is going through him. And he's sort of playing as a second striker just behind Jan. And this goes back to what I was saying when I was talking about Bosnich, that I think in modern football it's increasingly hard to pick out an individual. So you think of, say, David Beckham's performance against Greece in 2001, and that was a stunning individual performance. But it's actually a sign that everything is broken down, that one player is having to take everything on. And actually, I think that was detrimental to both Beckham and England in the longer term, because Beckham kept trying to do that. And there's only certain very limited circumstances in which one player running everywhere works. I think the slight exception to that is if you're playing as a second striker and your midfield sits quite deep, you can leave your post a bit more and go hunting the ball. And Ayew just kept going back, picking up the ball, running with it, kept getting fouled. He took an absolute batter in that game. And Tunisia were getting deeper and deeper. They take it to extra time. He's thinking, well, I've seen this before. Tunisia will nick something from a set play, or they'll win it on penalties. That's what Tunisia kept on doing. And Ayew just keeps going. Abdenur, the centre-back, gets sent off for Tunisia early in the second half of extra time, I think for a foul on Ayew. And then a couple of minutes after that, it's as if that moment has totally discombobulated Tunisia. There's a very simple ball in from the right. Matlouti, the Tunisia keeper, drops it, and the ball just drops to Ayew, 4 yards out, quite a narrow angle. And you can almost see the look of surprise and panic on his face that he's got this chance, having absolutely run himself into the ground for the previous hour, but he's got enough technical ability to just sort of poke that over the line, and Ghana win it 2-1. But then he probably, I think, was worn out by that, and he'd taken such a kicking that in the semi-final against Zambia, he just wasn't there, and Zambia ended up winning it and going on. One of the great Cups of Nations stories of them beating Cote d'Ivoire in the final in Libreville 19 years after the air crash. But that performance from Ayew in Franceville in the quarter-final, it was just the physical courage of it, the kicking he took, and then just kept going back, absolutely remorseless and relentless.
Perfect. The last one that we have is Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah, he's a player who I have to say I don't really understand anymore. I thought I got him. I thought I kind of I'd seen enough of him into him with Belgium to sort of think, yeah, he actually is a really great player, and what happened at Manchester United was Manchester United's fault. And then you saw him at Chelsea last season, and I'm back to being baffled again. But Lukaku, when he's on song, I think is an incredibly potent forward, incredible range of abilities. And this game against Brazil in the quarterfinal of the World Cup, which was in Kazan, I'd been based in Kazan for most of the tournament. I was very fortunate that I got a load of great games. So I saw Germany go out, I saw Poland go out, I saw Argentina go out, and then I saw Brazil go out this night. And I'd seen Brazil. I'd been at the game in Samara when they beat Mexico in the last 16. You thought, oh yeah, they're really good. They're the team to beat in this tournament. And the team lineups come in, and looking at the Belgium team, thinking, okay, Lukaku's playing through the middle. Oh, where's De Bruyne playing? It doesn't quite make sense. Then they line up, and you realise, no, Lukaku's playing wide right, and De Bruyne's playing as a false nine. You sort of think, how's that going to work? And you realise that Martinez had got it absolutely right. That it totally threw Brazil. Lukaku's movement, pulling out to that right side, creating space, was perfect. Belgium really sort of they focused on Brazilian left side, which you'd think would be a strength because they had Neymar and they had Coutinho down that side and Marcelo. But actually, by attacking them down that side, they really exposed how weak Brazil were defensively on that side, and Lukaku was a huge part of that. And his link up with De Bruyne, kept on coming inside and sort of an inside right role, and Brazil just didn't know how to pick him up. And I thought, for a player who's so physically imposing, who's so technically good, who's so good at scoring goals, to put in a sort of self-sacrificing performance like that was all about his movement. I thought that suggested a player of profound tactical intelligence and somebody who's prepared to sacrifice himself absolutely to the greater good. And I assumed he'd do that at Chelsea, and he didn't. I thought Mason Mount could do what De Bruyne had done that day, and that didn't quite work out. But that one day, his link up with De Bruyne, I thought was absolutely sensational.
Oh, class. That's exactly what we were looking for this morning, Jonathan. Thanks a million for doing all that for us. Cheers.
Cheers, no worries, thank you.
It's Jonathan Wilson there with our inaugural episode of You Had to Be There. And we're going to
be hard beaten.
You're going to get you to do your list, obviously.
That's a very, very strong list. We're actually kind of, it's like, I mean, I would expect somebody who has covered football for a long time, not Jonathan, but for somebody to say, like Maradona or something like that, or Messi, the few times, but that was...
No, that's a sensational list. Yeah. The Niall Quinn stuff is class as well. So named after JFK, not Celtic's John Kennedy, we think.
It's disappointing.
There you go. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's what we got on OTB Sports Radio today. At 1 o'clock, it's OTB Gold, Dr. Harry Edwards. Koi Gig from 3, Tyrone GA's Golden Days at 4. Owen will be tuned to that specifically. OTB Gold is Jason Sherlock talking about the JO years, and the show is live tonight from 7. You can follow Off the Ball across all our social channels, subscribe to our YouTube, make sure you download the OTB Sports app. After the break, we're live with Limerick's Seamus Hickey as we continue to hear from the hurlers who played against Brian Cody's Kilkenny sides down through the years. During the break, you're going to hear a clip from the latest episode of Koi Gig as Kathleen McNamee and Alana Kanan preview tonight's Euro 2022 semi-final between Germany and France, with the winner facing England at Wembley on Sunday. Koi Gig's back tomorrow with full semi-final reaction as well as a bumper end of tournament chat next week. The Koi Gig pod on OTB Sports is in association with Cadbury FC, official snack partner to the Republic of Ireland women's national team.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Yeah. Sean has muted himself, I think. I'm not sure what's going on there. Paul, come on, you come in. You can finish the job from another Bulls fan. Are you standing beside Sean?
Yeah, we're all on the Spurs, but we're not one bit happy. There's 50 of us on this bus and we're not one bit happy.
For immediate reaction from around the grounds, catch League of Ireland late night every Friday 10 p.m. on Twitter Spaces. Follow @OffTheBall.
I would probably tip Germany just because I think they've been the most consistent, and I think it's like you said before, they've kind of gone through all this without that much faff or like any sort of thing around them, and every match of theirs that I've watched, I've never felt like they were on the edge or like they were kind of close to losing. You always felt confident that they were going to get there eventually. Like it might take them until 60, 70 minutes to score, but you knew they would score, and they'll score 1 or 2 and it'll be safe enough. And even the sort of form that Alex Popp has been in which is their first ever Euros. I think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because she had the injury the last one.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's so mental for a player of her caliber. This is her first Euros. But I don't know. They've been so steady in everything that they've done. And I feel like France hasn't been entirely.
This summer, we're bringing you double Koi Gig.
For me, she's the best English centre-back. Play your best players in their best position. I don't think the captain is droppable, particularly after making the statement of dropping Steph Houghton. You'd love to see someone like McGill pop up with a goal up top and just set the place on fire. You'd love to see a fairy tale story.
For the best insight and analysis from this summer's Euros, subscribe to the Koi Gig pod on the OTB Sports app now.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
17 minutes past 9. We've been hearing this week from loads of the hurlers who played under Brian Cody. Yesterday we had Dermot the Rock O'Sullivan on talking. He had a great story about the All-Star trip to Argentina, about where Cody gave him a little bit of advice after he was getting the runaround from Damien Hayes. To get more about what it was actually like to come up against his teams, I'm delighted to say we're joined by Seamus Hickey. Seamus, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, Ger. Morning, guys.
Talk to us about Cody and what kind of an impact he had on the careers of the players who came up against him. Because obviously, I think maybe by the time you go up against him for the first time, his legend is beginning to be burnished. We're beginning to understand the force of personality and power, because he's basically onto his second team already by that stage. He's taken an All-Ireland winning team. He's kicked most of them out, and he's brought through a crop of youngsters who it turned out were absolutely sensational. So what was your experience of it like?
So I grew up basically and was formed in underage hurling while he was Kilkenny hurling manager. And, you know, when I got to the All-Ireland minor hurling final in 2005, it was Cork and Kilkenny. were dueling it out, and it was. I got onto the senior panel in 06 when it was Cork were going for 3 in a row, and it was Kilkenny that was stopping them, and it was. It was at the time it was the likes of a Donald O'Grady or a John Allen and the Cork hurling personalities that were as equally formative to the kind of the environment that I came into. But what I was absolutely sure of was in Kilkenny. I suppose what stood out to me about Kilkenny was their physicality. They were all, especially the likes of, I was a huge fan of Niall Hickey as a player. I was a huge fan of Peter Barry, a centre back, and these were the kind of guys that I was looking up to. It was all defenders really, and I was just massively impressed with their physicality, their ability to hurl, and it was just a great time, I suppose I'd say, for hurling at the time. But when I came in 06, we had a kind of a half decent run, got to an All-Ireland quarter-final and lost to Cork. But the following year, then we managed to get to All-Ireland final against Kilkenny. And it was that team, then obviously it was the super team that we ran up against. And we weren't really aware of how good they were at the time. So it was a bit of a, we felt we had a chance. So it was one of those things where, what stood out to me and one of the main experiences about that weekend for me was it was Kilkenny had exceptional talent, and their intensity and their aggression in the game was second to none. It was unparalleled, and it was one of those things where I would have taken out of that for years to come. But was if you can't meet the intensity stakes and the physicality stakes at the very beginning, well then you're not in the game to win a hurling game. You're not in the game to match them in skill or to beat them on the scoreboard. You just have to match that physicality and intensity at the beginning. But on the Sunday of the All-Ireland 2007, I was in the corner expecting to be marking Richie Power, and I'd set myself up for it during the week, and I'd watched video of Richie Power, and I was expecting him to be my job. And Eddie Brennan arrived into my corner. And Henry Shefflin arrived in full forward and Stephen Lucy, and we had Richie Power out centre forward. We had a number of changes at the beginning that we had to adapt to. Now, we had played the Waterford team that year in the All-Ireland semi-final, where the 6 Waterford forwards never had a position, and John Mullane could turn up anywhere, Paul Flynn could turn up anywhere. We had played that. But it was something completely different. Again, Shefflin at the edge of the square was unnerving, and the likes of Eddie Brennan then coming into my corner. Again, the first 10 minutes of that game were an absolute nightmare of a start, and it was just to me afterwards, and it stood out. And it was a tough learning experience for me as a hurler, but it was just how the matchups for Kilkenny were always key, how Cody found the matchups. And it was right the way through the Galway games they played later on, and the Tipperary games, when they used to move players around in Lark Corbett, when they used to put their forwards in different configurations again against Tipperary six backs. I always found that they were looking for an opportunity to exploit not necessarily a weakness, but definitely a strength of theirs. So it was one of the massive learning experiences that I had early days, and that was 07. And then they cast a shadow over my career, because we met them so often. It was a lot of times at the end of our year. So it was 07, it was 012, it was 12, it was 14, it was 17, and every time, I suppose we were always kind of respected by Kilkenny, to be fair, as giving them a game in a time when a lot of teams weren't giving them a game. And what I always distinctly remember about Cody was his after-game comments. So he used to always come in after games, and what always stood out to me about his personality was he was incredibly intense and competitive on the sideline and anything to do around the game. As soon as the game was over, he was like a disciple of the game. He was a hurling fan and a hurling man first. And every time he used to come into our dressing room, and lots of different managers have come into our dressing rooms at different times, obviously after games. But he was incredibly sincere. Now 07 I remember very little because I wasn't in the mind frame to take in much in. But 2012 we met him in an All-Ireland quarter-final in Thurles, and we were starting to get better again after an absolute nightmare of a time in 2010, and we were starting to build back up. And 2013 then we actually went on to get to an All-Ireland semi-final again. But in 12 he came into our dressing room, and in a very sincere and absence of any patronising tone at all, he told us that hurling needed Limerick, and it needed Limerick strong. It needed Limerick at the top table with the other, the Tipperaries, the Corks, the Kilkennys, because it was good for the game. And I don't think for a second he wanted Limerick to beat Kilkenny, but he wanted them strong, and he wanted the work that we were doing to continue, and that it was one of those days he could actually feel like he was giving you the team talk. It was like he was part of your management team at times, because it wasn't that dissimilar at all in 2014 when we ran them so close in the All-Ireland semi-final, and arguably we should have beaten them. We've possibly had probably played better on the day, but conceded 2 goals at the worst possible times at the end of at either half. So I remember he fiercely encouraged and kind of endorsed the work we were doing in Limerick, and that actually left a very, very long and lasting mark on me going as I played. But it was also kind of, if you're talking about the effects that he had in his players, I met Henry Shefflin after the 2014 All-Ireland semi-final, and when Henry had come on now, he came on as a sub. It was one of his last years, and he was greeted with about 6 shoulders from our 6 backs. Everybody was encouraged to give Henry a few lumps. But Henry had been a consummate competitor. I met him the week after the game, and I was in agony. We'd come so far, and we were waiting to make a breakthrough. And it was again a black and amber jersey that had stopped us. And I was saying, oh yeah, I suppose we did well. And he goes, yeah, I suppose, yeah. He goes, but Donald Grady should have been sent off. He'd have been down to 14 men, and there was 2 frees in the first half we weren't given. I was like, Genie Mac, Henry. I'm like, what? I was like, he won the game. I'm dying here. Give me some bit of sympathy or something. But to me, that was a kind of a hallmark of the man that was above him. It was just that sheer intensity of competition. And I met him.
Imagine what it would have been like if you'd beaten him.
To be honest, though, I don't think he would have talked to me if I did. But on a serious note, it was telling, and I kind of always saw a lot of parallels between Shefflin as a leader and Cody as a leader. I kind of thought there were 2 sides of the same coin, really. But I met Cody in Austin, Texas, on the All-Star trip. Then after that, similar to Dermot, but again, just Brian was there with his lovely wife, and just an absolute gentleman. And again, it's hard to keep saying this without it sounding insincere or patronising, but he genuinely was. He was like, "You're doing great things," and keep knocking on the door, and the door will open. And I hugely admired him, and to kind of I aspired to have his respect, and a lot of Kilkenny or Limerick hurlers, we just really wanted to be respected and to be a genuine threat in the competition, and ultimately then to try and break through. But it was that kind of thing where you knew that there was 3 certainties in life at that stage. It was death, taxes, and Kilkenny waiting in an All-Ireland semi-final. So it was a tough time to be playing against him.
Did he try to give you any coaching nuggets in that trip to Austin?
At that trip, no, because there was a good share of Kilkenny boys around me at the time, because they had won 15. So it was the 2 year. It was 14-15 that went, and so I suppose that year in Austin, he was over our team in the for the game. So the 2 managers, himself, and I can't remember who was the second one. Jeannie Mac.
Liam Sheedy, maybe? Or he was gone?
No, it wasn't Liam. It wasn't because he had stepped away. But Brian was over our team. He goes, "Lads, we're here. We might as well win this game." And it was one of those things where I always thought the All-Star game was a lost opportunity to play really good hurling in a place where it's not seen that often. I was one of the few people who thought that. But Cody was of this. He was basically, we're here representing the game. Let's give the game as good as we can give. And it was funny. He put me cornerback on I think it was Colin Fenley, and he told me about Colin, and it was basically like, you got to get out in front of him. You're not going to win. You're not going to beat him in a foot race. And I was like, thanks, Brian.
Breaking news: Colin Fenley super fast. Yeah,
he was like, Colin's fast. I was like, Genie, mate, this is how you're winning All Ireland. It's great. So, but it was a great experience, and like that, just that desire to have his respect was kind of a driving force for me, because he was, to me, he was one of the greats of the game, and that was early on in my career. I would have seen that.
Can I just go back to 2007? I presume it's difficult, or maybe it's not difficult for you to talk about now because you have an All-Ireland medal at the end of your career and you make a great comeback from that to end up being an All-Star and you're Young Hurler of the Year that year. But after 10 minutes, it's 2-3 to no score, and the first goal and the second goal come in about a 45-second period, it feels like. The first one is Eddie Brennan just getting out in front of you, going around you, and then basically passing the ball to the net with a bit of pace. And the second one is just a massive long ball into Henry, who's one-on-one, and it looks like he's throwing the ball into the net, but obviously his stick work is so fast that the camera barely catches it, and he's just tapping it in. And it's literally game over at that stage, right? Like, did you feel like you could come back?
So the first one, so I was a bit shell shocked after the first one. So and corner forwards have scored goals before. Like it's one of those things where you kind of recover from. But it was just, I suppose for me, it was the especially Eddie. So I was roughed up in the corner. I was I was physically dominated in the corner, and so the first few balls that came in, before the ball even got there, I was hit. The ball got there, I tried to compete and I lost the competition. But the goal was from a sideline ball where I thought I was actually in decent position. I was goal side, and I thought it was fine. But it was, I think Eddie caught it on the turn, turned and kept running. And just, again, like you said, he was close enough then at that stage where he could actually just pick his spot and touch it in. But the Henry goal was like, after the Eddie goal, we said, okay, fair enough, this is a shit start, we can keep going. But after the Henry goal, it was like, oh dear, okay, this is our nightmares. And it was I suppose who would have felt it most was myself and Stephen Lucy. We were kind of, we'd have been fairly solid together, but we were both rattled after it. And so, the rest of the team actually played exceptionally well. And it's very, very difficult to see that in hindsight. But that team, like Ollie Moore, had an exceptional game that day. We did have good performances. Mike Fitzgerald played well in the wing. We had good performances around the field. Brian Geary played very well centre back. It's just, I suppose, the start was so hard to recover from. And we lost by 6 points in the end, which was actually the closest anybody got to them in the 4-year run.
Yeah, and you're 9 down after 10 minutes. So you're 19 at that stage, are you? Maybe 20, just turned?
Yeah, I was 19 in 07.
So essentially the manager's like, let's pick on the young guy. Eddie Brennan, you get in there and you see what he's made of. And like, it is a baptism of fire. Did the fact that you got Young Hurler of the Year help to ease the pain a little bit, to give you the confidence to come back from that? Because a lot of people get brutalised in an All-Ireland final like that and are like, okay, thanks very much, I've had enough now.
Yeah, well, to be fair, what it did was it told me that I was probably too nice a cornerback. And the players I had marked that year, Owen Kelly, John Milan, and who was and in Seamus Butler for Tipperary as well, in the 3 games we played against them. I was probably just too nice, and that was a good lesson. But what I realised was playing cornerback, and I looked at the likes of Jackie Tyrrell, and I looked at the likes of Kavanagh in the corner for Kilkenny, and I was there going, okay, they're the gold standard. you know. And I was looking at Brian Murphy in Cork as well. Like they weren't just the nicest guys in the field, and that's what I kind of had to teach me. And like Eddie Brennan afterwards, you know, like I never forget it at the All-Stars when I went up there, and I was feeling, you know, again, you were probably still, you know, feeling even any award you get is you feel a bit of a fraud, like, but you go up there, and it was the Kilkenny boys were the first ones to shake my hand when I got up to the seats when you get your award, and it was. You know, that left a lasting impression on me. And when you actually socialise with the Kilkenny boys afterwards, you realise that you know, they're incredibly good at what they do, but there's really good stuff in them, and that they were really, really sound men. When they cut loose, and they were gents. And it was kind of part of the culture that was built in Kilkenny. I thought it was that, you know, there was this kind of patriot way in Kilkenny, if you understand my meaning from the American football side of things. You know, you were expected to carry the Kilkenny brand with you, and you were expected to represent it well. And I thought that was evident, and it was Eddie who shook my hand the first time up there that day, and it was one of those things where, you know, it was. You lost on the day and you got on with it.
Yeah. No, it turns out they're all good fellas, and they're all like deep thinkers on the game and deeply understand how a game should be won and lost.
It made it very difficult to hate them, I'll be honest, which, you know, it didn't help me over the years, but they were exactly that. They just didn't talk in the media that often. They weren't as notable around the place until a lot of them retired, and then, you know, realised, oh gee, there's actually an awful lot more to all these guys.
And lucky enough, I think that we're getting to understand that about the Limerick lads now in the middle of it, that there are really great characters there and their stories are really interesting. And I don't know if that's a conscious effort that they're making for that, or if it just automatically happened.
I think you'll find a lot of, even with Joe Schmidt's time in the rugby setup, you just have this, you're encouraged to keep everything about the game, and anything that is peripheral, that is not contributing to you being good at the game, isn't essential. It's not necessary, and don't put a whole pile of time into it. You know, you need to focus on the one thing, and I think it was LeBron James. I think in all the different activities that he goes on, between advertising, between movies. I mean, he goes, remember, at the end of it all, it's the one thing that matters, and the one thing is the game. And I think that's kind of frustrating as well at times for media and things like that, when you do know that guys have great personality and they don't kind of give or show a lot of themselves while they're in it. But, you know, I think the great ones, they save all, or, you know, 90%, 95% of their energy for their craft. And, you know, I don't, especially in Limerick, we were never banned for talking to the media, goodness knows. We were given great freedom, but it's not the one thing, and the one thing is hurling, and the one thing is winning All Ireland. And I felt like that looking in at Kilkenny.
Yeah, 100%. Seamus, great stuff. That was brilliant. Thanks a million for sharing that with us. Cheers.
Thanks guys.
It's Seamus Hickey again. Always really interesting when it comes to hearing about that stuff and what the response was like inside opposition camps as well. That Eddie Brennan performance in that All Ireland final is one of the signature moments in that run as well, but the recovery that he makes from it for the rest of his career, which obviously ends up with an All-Ireland medal at the start of the second great team that we're going to talk about, really, when it comes to like hurling in the colour TV era. It's like Limerick and Kilkenny.
Yeah, Cody got his wish.
Getting very close to it. He did.
Yeah.
You got to be careful what you wish for.
Hurling needed it.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish today. Wouldn't it be mad if that was like that planted the seed, and then it's like, oh, balls. I shouldn't have been giving out advice, turned out. But I think that is the mark of the hurling man, right? That he becomes this passionate, I want everybody to do well. After I've won, after we've got our bit, then I want everybody else to. So I don't know, maybe I was saying, Dublin, come on, get him. Come on, ring him up.
Yeah, or is there like a kind of a more, is there a higher up role?
National role.
A national role, yeah. Like I think the GAA have experimented with that role in the past, just trying to promote game of hurling elsewhere. But It's obviously it's a fairly complicated question, and maybe high up in the Kilkenny GA as well as one that's been floated in the past as well.
Yeah. With you last week by Eddie O'Connor.
Eddie O'Connor was saying that. Well, he said it a few years previous, but he doubled down on it last week.
Shane C says surely Ten Hag is saying publicly he wants him to stay, but in reality he must be hoping he can ship him out to start fresh. Bobby Dwyer says Ferguson getting involved in the meeting was unnecessary. Only last week John Giles was saying with Nathan about Busby's negative influence on the club and Frank O'Farrell after he left. I mean, there's definitely the bang of that going on here. Like, why is he involved in transfer dealings 10 years after he left? Not a good idea. CS says United are rebuilding. Keeping Ronaldo is a waste of a year for all parties. That being said, he could single-handedly win them the Europa League, a much easier route to the Champions League than fourth. And Shane C says Colm is rocking some hipster football gear this morning. It's a Cork soccer top, Satellite Taxis FC, Satellite Taxis United, Satellite Taxis Athletic, FC. There you go. Founded in 2013. Right, there you go. That is today's show. We are playing you out with some athletics, I think. Yeah, Cathal Dennehy from last night's show talking about the World Athletics Championships and the new international superstar of the sport, Sydney McLaughlin.
Still in Eugene, Oregon, as I understand it, Cathal?
That's exactly it. I'm afraid to leave. I'm too used to the cycle now, Joe.
So this is a novel enough venue for championships of this calibre. It is like, in some respects, I don't know if it's traditionally a home of US track and field, but certainly you would think of Steve Prefontaine, and everybody's seen the movies of Prefontaine if they haven't necessarily watched all his career that closely. He was University of Oregon, and then as much as anything I just think of it as Phil Knight and Planet Nike in some respects.
It very much is. I mean, Phil Knight's money and Nike's money kind of infuses the whole way through this city. It's a place of only about 170,000 population, and I think there's about 30,000 students who kind of clear out in the summer, and it becomes a relative ghost town. But yeah, I mean, Phil Knight is the donor whose money, like, he loves. He's the founder of Nike. He was a runner himself. He was a University of Oregon student, and he spent, they estimate, they don't know the official amount, but he spent about $280 million, they think, the chief donor behind the new Hayward Field Stadium, giving it the facelift of all facelifts, I suppose, for this championships. And yeah, it's just a strange place, Eugene. It made perfect sense to come here, to at least try coming here, because it's the first ever World Championships in America, and it's called Tracktown USA. It's where the heart of athletics beats strongest across the US. But then again, this is a decision that goes back to Lamine Diak's reign at the IAAF back in 2015. The decision was made, and there was no bid process, which some others like Gothenburg weren't too happy about that it came here. And I think over the years, it was worth a try, but as the logistical issues became more prevalent about coming here, in terms of there's not nearly enough hotels, there's not nearly enough accommodation for places, there's no international airport within a 2-hour drive. You know, Portland is 2.5 hours away or so. So it was the first time an event of this size had been staged in a city so small. And I think, for all that it was great on the track, I think maybe the tickets were overpriced, so the stands weren't filled. And I think a lot of parents and athletics fans I know from Ireland initially thought this sounds like a great idea, but when they actually looked into coming here and realised they were going to have to blow about $5,000 to watch some athletics for the week or watch their sons and daughters compete, they realised it was not so realistic. So I think it was definitely worth a try, and it was a really good championships, but I'd be shocked if we ever came back to Eugene for a senior world championships.
That is interesting, I have to say. I mean, it's not the first major sporting event of the last couple of years which has been hosted in a place not equipped to host it, and you suspect money talks. I mean, when we say worth a try, were we expecting some kind of magical carpet to take people from the airport to Eugene, or, you know, what was the surprise we weren't sure about?
Yeah, I think it was kind of decided without fully maybe being thought through. It was just like, yes, US World Championships, let's do it. But then I think realistically, you've, I think, 1,800 athletes or so from 180, 190 countries. And even that alone, you know, was a feat in itself to get them housed, I suppose. And then the tickets were kind of priced to the point where, you know, it was expensive for everyone. If you came, it's a 10-day championship. So if you're talking about coming to bringing the family to a number of that, there was nowhere to stay for less than $200 a night. And then the tickets on top of that, it was just, during a cost of living crisis, it was no surprise that the stands weren't 100% full really all week, as good as the attendances often were.
Carl, there's loads to talk about out of these championships. Certainly, records falling is a trend of the last couple of years in particular. And I was reading a piece in the New York Times, and to be fair, it was making the point that this trend is across the board, both at the very elite level right down to high school, and it cites training, it cites better technique, it cites certainly better shoes and better equipment. And, you know, before anyone says we're naive to drugs, I guess the point you'd say back is drugs have been around the whole time. It's not like they're a new phenomenon. So there has to be more to it than just, suspicious drug practices when it comes to these records falling. I was reading more records went last year than in any year since 2008. And this year is on course to be better again. And the chart I was looking at, and this is probably simplified, and it's where you can tease things out a bit for us. But certainly in the 1980s, there was a huge spike, and one suspects that probably was drug-fueled in many ways. And the 1990s had its fair share of records broken. The 2010s, by comparison, were very low if you're looking at the last 40 years. And for whatever reason, the 2010s was low. But now we're starting to creep up again in this decade. So kind of an interesting time in athletics.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I think it would be naive, and I think everyone in the sport knows that when you look at that spike in athletics, especially on the women's side, that it was primarily drug-fueled across the board in the 80s, because it was, as they say, the steroid era where there was no meaningful drug testing existing in the sport, and that's why also clearly steroids have a more significant effect on females than they do on males in terms of performance benefit, and that's why a lot of the women's records during that time were put into a place that was untouchable. Obviously, I don't think all of them were, so you can't kind of go across the board with that, but it was certainly a factor in what happened to the sport through the 70s and 80s. And I think a lot of the generations that followed were trying to live up to those marks, unrealistically so, and then better drug testing came in the 90s. But I think drug testing has never been better in athletics than it's been in the last few years. So you certainly, obviously you can never know for sure, but you can certainly have a higher level of confidence given the way the Athletics Integrity Unit have gone after cheats in the sport and the way they've tightened things up, like with things like the biopassport. Obviously it's happened in cycling as well. But you are now seeing athletes edge towards the times that were being run in the 80s and 90s. And I think a big reason for that, given drug testing policies have never been more stringent, it's never been harder to get away with cheating. I think the big reason to look to is tech. Obviously there are a number of factors here. There's like training methodologies have advanced, things like nutrition, recovery. People are doing all these things a lot better, but they're quite small percentage gains, I would say, tiny percentage gains overall, even though they are having an effect. But I think in the last 5 years on the road, since 2016, since Nike came out with their first super shoes and then everyone else copied them, the same technology has made its way onto the track. It only showed up on the track in 2019 at the World Championships. That's when Nike had the same technology it has in its running shoes into its spikes, i.e. super responsive foams, carbon plates embedded in the foams, and all positioned at an angle that, I guess, increases running economy, increases speed. And all the other brands now have caught up to that. And it took them maybe a year or two to catch up to that. But I think what we saw, all of those spikes, those super spikes, were all ready for 2020. Obviously, the Olympics were delayed a year. And I think that's why we saw the spike in world records last year, 2021, is that the technology across the board is so much better now in spikes. We can't yet quantify exactly how much it is, but from having visited the Adidas hub here in Eugene last week and having been taken through the technology by one of their shoe engineers, it's pretty clear it's quite substantial. I asked him, what's the data on the difference it's making to things like stride length, ground contact time, overall speed. And he said, I can't tell you the numbers, but he said, he just smiled at me and said, it's making a difference. Right. And then I was talking to Lance Browman, who coached the 200-meter men's champion, Noah Lyles, and the 400-meter women's champion, Shawnee Miller-Weibo. He's one of the leading sprint coaches in the world. And I just asked him, what's your impression on the difference it's making? And he said about between 7 and 10 100ths of a second over 100 meters. So I suppose when you factor in that, he said he's no data to back that up, but that's just his impression on what he's seen in training and things like going through the speed gates and things that they would measure with the spikes of today versus the spikes of, say, 3 to 4 years ago.
And Carl, as an aside, Flojo's records still very much stand in the 100 metres and 200 metres, and in the 400 metres you have Marita Koch of East Germany, where I think it's fair to say there's fairly concrete suspicion over what was going on in that era. Is there a school of thought in athletics that that era, those world records should be expunged for the good of the sport, or is that an ongoing discussion at all?
I mean, it was a few years ago. I mean, Pierce O'Callaghan was one of the people leading that when he was at European Athletics, who's now at World Athletics. But I think it was, I would say, an unrealistic expectation to try and expunge the record books, because if you look down the record books on either side, it's very hard to draw the line. You know, obviously people talk about the 80s as a really black era when it comes to doping in athletics, and obviously other sports as well, when it was just, you know, it was the Wild West. There was no testing, proper testing, so you'd no way of catching people. But at the same time, you know, there was no test for EPO until the year 2000. So a lot of people know what happened in cycling and athletics, and indeed soccer and other sports throughout the 90s. It was just open use of EPO and no possible way of getting caught. So I think, and even that continues today with designer steroids and things like that to an extent. So, and there are records that have been set in the last 10 to 20 years that people inherently, and people who have a good instinct for these kind of things, know are almost certainly doping fueled. But so I think you can't really draw the line with a cutoff in a point in time and say, right, before this date the sport was magically, or was dirty, and after this date the records were magically clean. So I think it is an unrealistic thing, and it's really unfortunate, I think, for a lot of modern day athletes that, you know, you're having perhaps the most talented athletes of all time, and they're going up against marks that are completely unrealistic. And I'm thinking there of Valerie Adams of New Zealand, who is probably the greatest female shot putter of all time. And she's just so outspoken about anti-doping throughout her career, and a really credible, believable athlete. But yet when you look at the all-time list, she's just, you wouldn't think she's the greatest shot putter of all time because of what she's gone up against.
With the time difference over here, you won't be shocked to hear that it hasn't really grabbed the imagination all that much, and such is life. And it was interesting, on Sunday I was just out getting the papers, and the Sunday Times main section, their main picture was Sydney McLaughlin. And that's always a sign that someone is piercing through and becoming the poster girl or poster boy of a championship. So we really should talk about Sydney McLaughlin. She's still just 22 years of age. She's an Olympic gold medalist. She won the 400 metres hurdles, and at this championship she destroyed her own 400 metre hurdles record. She's of the US, and this is, I think, the fourth time in just over a year she's taken time off the 400 metres hurdles record. We're talking about somebody potentially historically great here, am I right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think if Sydney McLaughlin was perhaps in the 100 metres, you know, she would be a Usain Bolt-esque kind of name at the moment in global sport. She's kind of starting to break through to those ranks. And I think something that probably also realistically holds her back is her kind of personality. She's quite shy, you know. She's spoken about kind of mental health problems in the past, and how she feels the pressure and perhaps anxiety coming up to races and things like that. And so she's very guarded in interviews. She doesn't give much away at all. And people kind of look at her from the outside and say, like, does she even enjoy the sport? Because she really, what you see in her at the finish line is relief more than happiness, more than joyous celebration. And I think because of that, people have kind of been slower to warm to her, or slower to probably appreciate how great her achievements have been, versus, say, some of the more exuberant athletes like Shelley-Ann Fraser-Price or Karsten Warholm in the sport. But what she's achieving athletically is just completely unprecedented. I mean, people going about Usain Bolt being a great junior athlete. Like, Sydney McLaughlin is the ultimate outlier among outliers. You know, from the age of 14 to 19, she set the best times ever run for the 400 metre hurdles all the way up. She set the world under 18 record, the world under 20 record, and now she hasn't just broken the world senior record, she's moved it into territory that I really do struggle with, a 50.68 seconds world record. I mean, it's obscene how fast that time is. I mean, it's faster. It would have finished 7th in the world 400 metre final for flat, and to think that she did it with 10 hurdles in the way is just beyond the realm of imaginary, I suppose. It was just out of this world performance, and I can't really see anyone coming close to it in the years ahead. I've no doubt that tech probably was a factor, you know, in terms of the fast tracks, the fast spikes, but at the same time, everyone else in that final had pretty much the same technology, I'm sure, that Sydney McLaughlin was wearing, and yet she is just streets ahead of the rest. So yeah, I think, and like you said, only 22 years of age. Yeah. The last world champion, Dalil Muhammad's over 30 now, you know, so there's no reason that if Sydney McLaughlin wants to, and if she does stay healthy for the next 10 years, there's no reason she can't win every global title and perhaps push that record out even further.
Amazing. So you said over hurdles she would have been 7th in the regular flat 400 metres. Okay, that's kind of hard to imagine in some respects. I was reading a piece by Jonathan Liu in The Guardian, and again, the fact that someone like Jonathan Liu is profiling her speaks to this maybe moment that she's having, and the world is starting to recognise what we have in our hands here. And he was charting her background. Her parents were star athletes, he said. So were her brother and her sister. She was sent to Union Catholic, where the school fees are $18,000 a year, and the expectations are stratospheric. She broke school records and state records, won a place at the prestigious US trials, etc. So the pedigree there is extraordinary. But what I wanted to ask you about, Cathal, was something you alluded to, and I suppose it's her general mental health.
As the favourite for the Olympic title, but this was probably a new level of pressure. 15,000 fans, first ever US Championships, pretty much everyone expecting her to win. And I just asked her, was that hard on you the last few days, and how hard was that? And really, she just didn't really answer, but I can only assume. And she just said, look, it's always pressure, but pressure is a privilege, etc., etc. But you just know that if she was being honest in that situation, she might have gone on about the sleepless nights and the pressure she felt. And I think really sometimes images can show it stronger than words, and I think the image of her coming across the line as exhausted as she was probably showed more of what was going on, in terms of, we saw so many athletes erupt into celebration after they come across the line, but Sydney just kind of sat down on the track. It was just a smile, and you could tell that it was probably much like Cathy Freeman at the Sydney Olympics after she won the 400 metres. It was a strange reaction. It wasn't happiness, it was just pure relief. And I think that speaks probably to the pressure that Sydney McLaughlin is under.
Yeah, it does seem that way, because even I just watched a New Balance video which features her training and doing various interviews, and it's her and her mother, and it's all very sanitised and corporate, and not much is given away. But that said, the theme of it is not one of joy. It's not one of, I'm a superstar, the world's my oyster, I'm going to kick on. It's one of, people don't realise how tough this is, and people don't realise the sacrifices. And she's interviewed with her best friend, and the friend is saying, I've seen you at your lowest moments and your highest. But there's that was the theme. It wasn't a straightforward one. Whereas, you think Usain Bolt in that period of his career, he just gives us the lightning and he just smiles and everything's gravy. So this is a very three-dimensional person with a lot going on. You almost sound like you wouldn't be shocked if she walks away from the sport in her 20s.
I mean, yeah, it wouldn't stun me, to be honest, in terms of, she's always kind of had an interest in things beyond athletics. And I was just sitting having a beer with one of the other journalists, an American journalist who's been covering her since her high school days, you know, and she was obviously the biggest name coming up through the US high school scene for the last 7 or 8 years. And he said, if there's one question you'd want a truthful answer from Sydney McLaughlin on, it's, are you enjoying it? You know, do you genuinely enjoy this sport? Because I would imagine there's a big part of her does enjoy it. But I think from the outside, just because she kind of does build those walls around her, it's very hard to see, I guess, the real reveling in the enjoyment. And like you said, the Usain Bolts or the Shelley-Ann Fraser-Prices or the Carson Warholms, they kind of allow us to see the joy in it, in the process and in the destination, I suppose they get to in the end. But with Sydney, there's just always this kind of wall built where she doesn't really allow people to see too much, either the good or the bad. Yeah. And I suppose we kind of just have to fill in the gaps for ourselves.
Just a layman's question, if you don't mind, Cathal. So she's frighteningly good here at the 400 metres hurdles. We've seen great athletes run different events. Has she traditionally run 400 flat, 200 hurdles? Is she very much just 400 hurdles and that's me?
No, she does mix it up. Yeah, she runs, her coach Bobby Kersey had her run 100 metre hurdles last year a bit to try and work on her flat speed. And she's also an amazing 400 metre runner, but she's never really gone into that. But she's talked about, now that she's kind of moved the world record into crazy territory at 400 metre hurdles, she's won the world and Olympic title. There's kind of nothing else for her to really do with 400 metre hurdles other than keep winning, which is obviously hard enough given the current generation. But so she's talked about maybe doing a double at the Paris Olympics, the 400 metres and 400 metre hurdles. Double would very much be doable. And I think, you know, the 400 metre flat title here was one.